Marshall Peak. Chapter 5870 Preparations. Although Yang Kai was half a day's journey away from the no-return pass, that only referred to the time required to arrive at the no-return pass through normal means for a human race squad-class warship. Be that as it may, such a distance was well within the attack range of Yang Kai and the Black Ink Giant Spirit Gods. At any rate, the Black Ink Giant Spirit God did not expect his attack to harm Yang Kai in any way. Yang Kai was in the Ninth Order, so how could a trivial universe fragment injure him? In response to the menacing attack, Yang Kai simply raised his hand slightly. The universe fragment that was hurtling towards him at an astonishing speed instantly came to an abrupt halt and quietly hovered in front of him. Then he clenched his raised hand into a fist. The huge universe fragment subsequently exploded into dust. The loud and flashy confrontation instantly alerted the entire Black Ink clan in the no-return pass to the enemy's presence. One after another, countless figures quickly rushed out of the no-return pass and stared in Yang Kai's direction. Those figures radiated with powerful auras that shook the void. They were none other than the Pseudo-Royal Lords. The Pseudo-Royal Lords had obtained tremendous power with the help of the Source Fusion technique, but in exchange, they could never utilize their full strength. The price of their power was also their lack of ability to control it. For that reason, every one of them was extremely conspicuous. They generally resembled bright lights in the dark of the night when they stepped onto the battlefield, which made it impossible for them to carry out any kind of ambush. Yang Kai also saw Mo and Mou. The two royal lords were standing in the middle of the no-return pass, surrounded by many pseudo-royal lords. When their gazes collided, Yang Kai grinned at them. On the other hand, the expressions of Mo and Mou darkened at the sight. Now that Yang Kai was here, how far behind could the human race army be? The Black Ink clan had known that the humans were coming to attack the no-return pass, and consequently made the necessary preparations in anticipation of the enemy's imminent arrival. Nevertheless, the speed of the human race army's advance was simply too swift. After staring at each other across the distance for some time, Yang Kai raised a hand and made a slashing motion across his throat at Mo and Mou before he casually departed. It did not take long before his figure vanished from sight. Inside the no-return pass, Mo scowled fiercely. There was no denying that Yang Kai's actions were incredibly childish, but he could not guess the reason for him acting this way. Did he come here just to demonstrate his might? But what was the point? Could he have other intentions? Mo instantly fell into deep thought, but he could not be blamed for being so cautious. Having been in conflict with Yang Kai for so many years, he knew that the latter had always taken advantage of the situation on every occasion. That was why, in his opinion, Yang Kai's every move was worthy of vigilance. At the same time, a universe temple had appeared in the void approximately 3 days' journey from the no-return pass, and a steady stream of human soldiers was emerging from it. The first to arrive was the Azure Sun Army. When their members had all been assembled, they quickly formed a solid line of defense around the universe temple. That was not all, as the Void Guard who arrived here the earliest were also searching for universe fragments of various sizes in the vicinity to serve as temporary camps. Mi Jingluan was standing near the universe temple when Yang Kai hurried over and reported his discovery at the no-return pass. Upon hearing Yang Kai's report, Mi Jingluan nodded. I expected as much. The Black Ink clan has always ignored the Great Passes because we had no means to threaten the safety of the no-return pass. But now, they are the ones under attack instead. Knowing that an attack by our army is imminent, I am sure they made various arrangements in preparation. The great passes that we left behind back then are perfect as barricades and barriers. After he finished speaking, he turned to look at Yang Kai and asked, Did Mo discover you? Yang Kai replied, I wasn't hiding. Mi Jingluan chuckled. In that case, they won't dare to act rashly. Mo is both shrewd and suspicious, so your sudden appearance outside the no-return pass will definitely make him worry about various possibilities. I was worried that we might be attacked, but it looks like there's no need for such concerns anymore. If the Black Ink clan struck before the human army could finish assembling, the latter would definitely be troubled. The situation at this moment was the perfect example. Just the Azure Sun Army alone would not be able to hold back so many Black Ink clansmen. Naturally, such an endeavor would also have been a huge risk to the Black Ink clan. The defenses at the no-return pass would weaken considerably if such a large number of Black Ink clan masters were to leave, which would have allowed the humans to exploit. The possibility was not likely to occur now though. So Mi Jingluan was only being vigilant towards every scenario. At this moment he was practically certain that the Black Ink clan would not dare to act rashly again after Yang Kai's actions. This incident had given the human race army the opportunity to fully assemble their troops. An endless stream of soldiers poured out of the Universe Temple. But they all marched in an orderly manner without the slightest display of chaos. Meanwhile, Yang Kai took out the sphere that had been compressed by his space-time river. After finding a wide and open place, he raised his hand and threw the sphere. The space-time river lingered around the void. Then the sphere expanded violently and quickly transformed into a majestic Great Pass. It was the Pure Yang Pass. Pure Yang Pass was not only the last remaining Great Pass in the possession of the human race, but would also be an important weapon in conquering the no-return pass. What's more, many of the soldiers learned for the first time that they had managed to regain one of the Great Passes from the hands of the Black Ink clan. Thus, they couldn't help cheering at the sight. The Ninth Order masters who arrived earlier flew over and came to stand beside Yang Kai. Staring at the modified Great Pass, they couldn't help feeling emotional. It was as though they were recalling the tragic battle at the no-return pass. A large number of troops soon swarmed into Pure Yang Pass. Following the arrangement that had been determined in advance, they swiftly took their positions. It did not take long before the many spirit arrays began lighting up consecutively. At the same time, numerous array masters prepared some spirit arrays and unique artifacts in the nearby void. There was no need to mention the specific purpose of the spirit arrays for the time being. On the other hand, the artifacts were actually a set of void Yin-Yang mirrors, something that Yang Kai researched and refined in the past. The artifact was a large-scale one meant for teleporting massive objects, so it had no power for offense or defense. Each set of the void Yin-Yang mirrors was composed of 16 array boards, which were divided into two sides, Yin and Yang. Once activated, the artifact could swap the spaces within the range of the Yin and Yang mirrors like flipping the front and back of a mirror. The effect was both profound and mysterious. Yang Kai had mainly researched the artifact for the purpose of mining resources in Black Territory. At the time, he had used the loyalty list to bring Wan Baifeng under his command. Black Territory had also fallen into his hands as a result. Black Territory was abundant with resources, but mining them was extremely dangerous. Nobody could delve deep into Black Territory, due to a massive early ancient era super array. Therefore, Yang Kai's initial idea was that the ore slaves could mine the resources safely if he could figure out a method to transport the ore stars located inside the array to a safer location. That was how the void Yin-Yang mirrors came into existence. The artifact was first created by Yang Kai, but was later modified by the artifact refining Great Grandmaster Ma Fan. The performance of the artifact became much better as a consequence. Yang Kai had not only brought this artifact to the Black Ink battlefield, but also spread it throughout the various Great Passes, allowing them the chance to study and replicate it. Thanks to the effects of the void Yin-Yang mirrors, Yang Kai managed to solve the shortage of supplies among the major Great Passes in one fell swoop. Before the existence of the void Yin-Yang mirrors, the major Great Passes were forced to dispatch their soldiers deep into the void to gather supplies. These soldiers not only had to search for and mine materials, they also had to keep a constant lookout against ambushes and raids from the Black Ink clan. Things were different ever since they acquired the void Yin-Yang mirrors. They could now transport dead universe worlds and fragments that contained abundant resources to the vicinity of the Great Passes and mine them without worry. In this way, the efficiency of collecting resources naturally increased significantly. It was not an exaggeration to say that the lives of the soldiers at the major Great Passes improved considerably after Yang Kai came to the Black Ink battlefield. At this moment, the human race army was preparing many void Yin-Yang mirrors in their surroundings. Needless to say, they were preparing to transport many universe worlds and fragments here. It was just that the purpose of these universe worlds was not for sourcing resources. The 3 million human race masters in the Third Order Open Heaven realm and below were responsible for collecting resources, so there was no need for the main army to worry about supplies. As for the universe worlds that they transported here from deep within the void, there were other uses for them. For this purpose, the remaining Void Guard, except those who had to stay behind to monitor the universe temples along the way, had immediately sprung into action after Li Wuyi left for the primordial heaven's source grand restriction with 80 Void Guard. Each of them had carried either the Yin mirrors or the Yang mirrors of a Void Yin-Yang mirrors set, and searched various areas of the void. As time passed, the various armies gathered in this place. Aside from the central army under Mi Jingluan's direct command who occupied Pyongyang Pass, the other armies claimed a universe world or large universe fragment in the vicinity as their base camp. Each of these camps was soon overflowing with people, as they worked to establish temporary outposts. The human race currently retained 12 armies, just like before. Mi Jingluan had not made many adjustments to the organization. After all, each army had experienced thousands of years of fighting together. The heart of the army was united by the blood of their companions and their enemies at this point, and it might instead be detrimental to make any rash changes. Therefore, the 12 armies remained even though there were not enough Ninth Order masters to oversee them all. Luo Ting he was in command of the Azure Sun Army. Xiang Shan was in charge of the Blood Flame Army. Ouyang Lai commanded the Profound Nether Army. Wei Junyang led the Wolf Fang Army. Xiao Xiao was in command of the Soaring Cloud Army. Wu Qing commanded the Purple Feather Army. The newly advanced Shi Dezhuang was in command of the Shocking Thunder Army while Tang Tao led the Red Flame Army. As for the Burning Moon Army, Twin Instrument Army, Azure Dawn Army, and Jade Cicada Army, these four remained unchanged. These four armies might not be under the leadership of a Ninth Order Master, but they had the largest numbers of divine spirits. In terms of overall strength, they were not inferior to the rest of the armies. Besides, these four armies contained many new generation 8th Order Masters who could advance to the 9th Order at any time. Once they experienced a breakthrough, these armies would also have the protection of a 9th Order Master. A few days later, large ripples spread out endlessly from an area somewhere in the void that was warded off by a set of Void Yang mirrors. The vibration from these ripples was so strong that the space anchored by the Yang mirrors became extremely unstable, making it difficult to distinguish between what was real and what was illusory. With the spreading of the ripples, the fluctuations of space principles became increasingly obvious. As time passed, under the watch of countless eyes, something seemed to appear in the space that was originally empty. Once all the commotion had settled, the object turned out to be an enormous universe world that had appeared out of nowhere. Several soldiers quickly stepped forward to retrieve the Yin mirrors before moving to set them up in a new free space. Many array masters and artifact refiners then rushed towards the universe world, and gathered on the side of it that was facing away from the no-return pass. Following a cursory survey of the geography, they immediately sprang into action, and prepared a large-scale spirit array on the back of the universe world. After the first universe world was transported here, via the Void Yin-Yang mirrors, more and more began appearing. Meanwhile, almost all the array masters and artifact refiners from the 12 armies were dispatched, working diligently without rest. Martial Peak. Chapter 5871, Universe Worlds. In the short span of 1 month, hundreds of universe worlds of varying sizes appeared in the void where the human race army had gathered thanks to the teleportation effects of the Void Yin-Yang mirrors. At this moment, every single artifact refiner and array master in the human race army was hard at work. Even Yang Kai was toiling away alongside them. Following the consumption of substantial resources, numerous spirit arrays were constructed on the universe worlds. Another 2 months later, their preparations were complete. The dwindling resources of the human race were completely exhausted after such a grand and large-scale project. However, the Ninth Order Masters did not seem worried about the situation. There were nearly 3 million humans at or below the Third Order gathering resources throughout the Black Ink battlefield, and many universe temples equipped with space arrays connecting to various locations. Therefore, it would not take long before large amounts of materials came flowing in from all directions. It could be said that they no longer had to worry about resources as soon as they entered the Black Ink battlefield through the secret passage. During the past 3 months, the Black Ink clan at the No Return Pass had repeatedly sent out scouts to investigate the situation. As they did not dare to dispatch any masters for the task, the information that the weak Black Ink clansmen could obtain was very limited. All the Black Ink clan knew was that the human race army had assembled at a spot some 3 days' journey from the No Return Pass, and that they could attack at any moment. They could not gain any further information regarding the situation. On this day, all preparations were completed. The human race army finally embarked on their quest to retake the No Return Pass. This crusade was the first of its kind in the thousands of years since the Black Ink clan first invaded the 3,000 worlds, the first time the human race had truly taken the initiative in the war. The roles of the hunter and the prey were reversed at this moment. It was also the first battle since the human race army launched their offensive. Hence, every single soldier in the human race army displayed high morale and intense fighting spirit. The bustling void became empty in a flash. Aside from the squads who had to stay behind and guard the universe temples, and the human race masters with special duties, the rest of the army had divided into 2 groups and advanced towards the No Return Pass. 1 day later, the movements of the human race army were relayed to the No Return Pass by their lookouts. Mo Na-yi finally felt his anxiety receding slightly at the knowledge. The human race army had come to attack, but there had been no movement from them for the past 3 months. The feeling of having a knife held against his neck was extremely uncomfortable. He did not know what sort of preparations and arrangements the enemy was making during this period, but he could be certain about one thing: he could not afford to underestimate them. Now that the blade had been swung, who was stronger and who was weaker would be determined in combat. There was no doubt that the human race army was the strongest it had ever been, but the Black Ink clan was not inferior. Mo Na-yi also believed that the Black Ink clan had a slight advantage as the defending party. Under these circumstances, the human race army would most likely be sent back in defeat if they came attacking directly from the front. It was truly unfortunate that the commander of the opposing party was Mi Jingluan, who would never make such a stupid decision. After receiving the report from the scouts on the front lines, Mo Na-yi glanced at the information and frowned deeply. It was just as he had expected. The human race army had made various deployments and arrangements in advance. The reports indicated that the human race army was not aiming for a frontal attack. On the contrary, they had divided their forces into 2 groups and taken a considerable detour by traveling in a wide arc. Judging by their formation, they seemed to be approaching the No Return Pass from both the right and left sides in a pincer attack. The deployment of the human race army was both reasonable, yet also unexpected. Nevertheless, their actions confused Mo Na-yi. He knew that Mi Jingluan was not naive enough to believe the humans could conquer the No Return Pass with such a simple pincer attack, but he could not figure out the purpose behind their deployment either. Unable to determine their aim, Mo Na-yi could only adopt countermeasures on the fly according to how the situation evolved. At his command, most of the Black Ink clan army in the No Return Pass mobilized various defensive measures ahead of the human race army's advance. The humans sailed forward aggressively. It was always necessary to take the initiative in a war. After all, the only deciding factor between victory and defeat was the limit of casualties that could be sustained by the respective parties. At this moment, Yang Kai was back at the base camp of the human army on one of the largest universe worlds in the vicinity of the universe temple. He was lying down in a deserted mountain valley with his arms behind his head and one leg crossed over his knee, staring into the void blankly. He looked like he was enjoying a rare moment of peace amidst the chaotic situation. He had been fighting the Black Ink clan for countless years. During this period, he had always been cultivating hard or rushing somewhere to accomplish a mission. There had never been a time when he could relax, so he couldn't help feeling a little strange at the abrupt change. Nevertheless, the reason he did not join the assault was that he had his own mission to carry out. Dozens of Void Guard and hundreds of 8th Order Masters were also tasked with carrying out similar missions. At this moment, they were scattered around the numerous universe worlds that had been prepared beforehand. All of a sudden, Yang Kai's unfocused gaze sharpened without warning, and a light flashed through his eyes at the same time. "It's about time," he muttered to himself, climbing to his feet as he stretched lazily. Peaceful and happy times were often short-lived in this age of chaos. After taking the time to forget about his troubles and enjoying a carefree rest for a day, Yang Kai felt refreshed and full of energy. It was time to take action. With a shout, he circulated his strength and channeled his world force into the spirit array beneath his feet. The intricate patterns of the spirit array immediately lit up and rapidly spread outward like an uncontrolled wildfire. Looking down from the void, it could be seen that the spirit array was extremely large. In fact, the spirit array practically covered 10% the entire universe world surface. When the spirit array was activated, an enormous light barrier emerged to surround the universe world. Propelled by the power of the light barrier under Yang Kai's control, the gigantic universe world which had been peacefully hovering in the void slowly began to move as though it was being pushed by a large, invisible hand. At first, this movement was slight. However, its momentum became greater and greater with the passage of time. After passing through the various spirit arrays that were constructed in the void beforehand, the speed of the universe worlds increased sharply. Furthermore, the direction in which the enormous universe world was advancing was none other than the direction where the no-return pass was located. Behind this enormous universe world, countless other universe worlds and fragments of varying sizes were moving in the same direction. It was a magnificent sight to behold. Yang Kai stood on top of the universe world, looking bold and heroic. Throwing his head back with laughter, he sent a divine sense transmission in all directions. Proud soldiers of the human race, let us charge into battle. Many Eighth Order Masters and Void Guards responded gallantly from the backs of those universe worlds. The strategy to attack the Black Ink clan by making use of the impact caused by the collision of universe worlds was pioneered by the Great Evolution Army during the previous war. While the Northern and Southern Great Evolution armies blockaded the Great Evolution Pass under Mi Jingluan's command, Xiang Shan led the Eastern and Western armies to assault the royal city. At that time, Xiang Shan had repeatedly unleashed this tactic, draining the strength of the Black Ink clan to a huge extent. This strategy was generally very difficult to employ. After all, it was very strenuous to gather the universe worlds that were scattered throughout the void. Simply transporting appropriate universe worlds with manpower alone was not only extremely time-consuming, but also incredibly labor-intensive, so the effort was considered impractical. However, the strategy became much more viable with Yang Kai's void Yin-Yang mirrors. The human race army gained the ability to gather universe worlds that were originally scattered throughout the void thanks to the support of the void Yin-Yang mirrors. Then they prepared various spirit arrays to support and reinforce their weapons. The Great Evolution Army had employed this tactic to cause not only tremendous damage to the Black Ink clan, but to also threaten the royal city in the Great Evolution Theater. At the same time, the losses faced by the Great Evolution Army were reduced significantly. The scouts dispatched by the No-Return Pass had naturally discovered traces of the human race army gathering universe worlds. Needless to say, even low-ranked Black Ink clansmen couldn't miss hundreds of universe worlds being brought over by the humans. The gathering of so many universe worlds was by no means a small-scale action after all. When Mo Na-Yi received the information from his scouts, he was amazed that the humans had such mysterious means. He did not think too much about this matter though, as he simply assumed that the human race masters were planning to mine resources from those universe worlds. How could he have known that they were planning to use these universe worlds to attack the No-Return Pass? If there were any survivors from the Black Ink clan army of Great Evolution Theater, they would have understood the human race army's intentions in a heartbeat. It was a pity that the entire Black Ink clan army from the Black Ink battlefield back then had been exterminated by the humans during the First Crusade. Furthermore, the Black Ink disciples under the current Black Ink clan's control had not participated in the previous war on the Black Ink battlefield. There had also been no need for the human race army to employ this tactic over the past few thousands of years. The assault on the No-Return Pass was the first opportunity to make use of this strategy. Mi Jingluan did not expect this battle to determine victory and defeat. There were countless masters in the No-Return Pass, not to mention 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods. They were by no means easy prey to defeat. Nevertheless, it was the first battle since the human race army set off to conquer the No-Return Pass, so it was only natural to start things off on the right foot. Therefore, they had not hesitated to bring out the universe world impact strategy that was used to besiege Great Evolution Royal City in the past. The humans even exhausted their remaining resources transporting and modifying several hundred universe worlds for this initial battle. The reason why the human race army had to divide into two groups and sail in a wide arc was to leave a clear path for the universe worlds that were hurtling towards the no-return pass. Otherwise, these universe worlds would have collided with their troops that were blocking the way. It would be extremely embarrassing if they struck their own forces before they even managed to attack their enemy. Besides, the human race army would also distract the Black Ink clan's attention by marching ahead. All the forces of the Black Ink clan in the no-return pass were currently focused on the human race army advancing from the left and right sides. How could they ever have imagined that hundreds of universe worlds would come flying at them from their center? Many Black Ink clansmen were gathered in the Grand Hall of the No-Return Pass, and the atmosphere was gloomy. The attack of the human race army had long been expected. In fact, Mo Nayi had already anticipated today's situation all the way back when he recalled all the pseudo-royal lords more than 20 years ago. At the time, the Black Ink clan could have chosen to retreat from the No-Return Pass, but where would they go after leaving this place? Were they supposed to aimlessly wander around the Black Ink battlefield? Even if they did that, they would be found by the human race army one day. Rather than fighting in the void of the Black Ink battlefield, it was better to stay and defend the already fortified no-return pass. Furthermore, the mission of the Black Ink clan had always been to erode the 3,000 worlds and destroy the human race, so that Mo would rule the universe. The Black Ink clan was not born to fight for their survival, but for their Supreme One's ultimate hegemony. Report after report came from the front. Following the steady approach of the human race army from both sides, the atmosphere in the Grand Hall became increasingly depressed. It was not until the human army was only half a day's journey away from the no-return pass that Mo Nayi slowly got to his feet. Glancing around at the many pseudo-royal lords gathered below him, he solemnly declared, "Everyone, assume your duties and take your positions. Since the humans dare to come attacking, then we will slaughter them until not a single one of them is left alive." The pseudo-royal lords accepted the order and hurriedly flew away. Then, Mo Nayi looked at Mou again. "Sir, when the time comes, we will need you to restrain one of the Ninth Order Masters. However, the situation on the battlefield changes rapidly. Please adapt to the circumstances as you see fit." Mou nodded. "I know, but I probably won't even need to worry about anything. The Ninth Order Masters will come to me themselves." Mo Nayi agreed. There were more Ninth Order Masters than Royal Lords at the moment, so they would surely attempt to restrain both himself and Mou. There was really no need for Mou to bother taking the initiative. Marshall Peak. Chapter 5872 One-Way Journey. Mo Nayi glanced at Di Luo. "I will engage with Yang Kai in battle. Meanwhile, look for an opportunity to make your move. Do not expose yourself unless you find a suitable opening." "I understand." Di Luo nodded heavily. As the only royal lord born within the Black Ink clan over the past 20 years, he was the trump card that Mo Nayi had prepared against Yang Kai, so his existence could not be exposed. The moment he appeared, he had to strike a deadly blow against Yang Kai. Among all the Ninth Order Masters, Yang Kai posed the greatest threat to the Black Ink clan. No matter the strength of the other Ninth Order Masters, they could be contained by several pseudo-royal lords working together. Only Yang Kai, whose Dao strength river was both profound and mysterious, was extremely difficult to handle. The pseudo-royal lords alone were not enough to restrain him. It was only possible to stop him if a royal lord personally took action. Moreover, it would also depend on whether there was an opportunity to obstruct Yang Kai, as the latter was proficient in the Dao of space, which made him as slippery as an eel. Without the right opportunity, nobody could even hope to pin him down. Although the Black Ink clan had 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods, they could not be dispatched into battle casually, as the true giant spirit gods were eyeing the no-return pass eagerly. If the 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods left their post in the no-return pass, the Black Ink clan would have no means to guarantee the safety of their rear. It could be said that the existence of the 2 giant spirit gods was keeping the Black Ink clan's strongest combat force in check. Naturally, the same could be said in reverse. In this situation, neither side had an advantage over the other. After making various arrangements, Emonayi darted out of the grand hall and stared into the depths of the void. With his cultivation and eyesight, he could naturally see the imposing human race army around him. The huge and boundless fleet coming from both sides resembled a swarm of locusts that covered his entire field of vision. Just looking at the scene gave off an extremely strong sense of oppression. Not to mention, there was a conspicuous and majestic great pass on the left side of the human race army that stood out like a sore thumb. The corner of his face twitched involuntarily at the sight of the great pass, as it was none other than pure Yang Pass that Yang Kai took from the No Return Pass some 20 years ago. Despite knowing that the human race army would use pure Yang Pass against the Black Ink clan if they let Yang Kai take it, the Black Ink clan was forced to make certain concessions due to the pressure from various threats caused by Yang Kai at the time. That was because the safety of the pseudo-royal lords wandering outside could not be guaranteed if Yang Kai was allowed to act as he pleased. The Great Pass had been repaired and modified by the human race. At this moment, the entire Great Pass seemed to radiate with a sense of grandeur. It was easy to see that the various artifacts mounted on the walls of the Great Pass were not mere decorations. Any Black Ink clansman who dared to approach the Great Pass would instantly be greeted with a storm of attacks. With pure Yang Pass, the safety of Mi Jingluan, who served as the supreme commander of the human race army, would be guaranteed. Emonayi couldn't help feeling a twinge of regret at the sight. He had been searching for an opportunity to eliminate Mi Jingluan the entire time, but the latter had always remained in the supreme headquarters during the previous wars. Because Mi Jingluan rarely entered the battlefield, the Black Ink clan had been unable to touch a single hair on his head up until now. Besides, it had been obvious that Yang Kai was preparing the Great Pass for Mi Jingluan when he came to the No Return Pass and demanded pure Yang Pass. Mo Na sneered coldly to himself. Yang Kai sure takes good care of Supreme Commander Mi. Then various other thoughts came to mind unbidden. I wonder if the human race army will fall into chaos if Mi Jingluan is killed before they launch their attack on the No Return Pass. Where is Yang Kai? He swept his gaze over the human race army coming from both sides, but did not spot his nemesis anywhere. The realization caused Emonayi to become vigilant. Not only was Yang Kai proficient in the Tao of space, but he also seemed to have mastered a mysterious secret technique that almost perfectly concealed himself. If he wanted to stay hidden and ambush the pseudo-royal lords during the battle, none of the pseudo-royal lords would survive the encounter. Could he be hiding in the vicinity? That's certainly a possibility. Just as Emonayi was starting to feel suspicious, the human race army that had been approaching the No Return Pass slowly from both flanks suddenly accelerated. The news was instantly relayed to the entire No Return Pass. The battle was about to begin, and the atmosphere in the No Return Pass was chilling. The entire Black Ink clan had mentally prepared themselves to fight the humans to the death. Likewise, the pseudo-royal lords were blazing with intense fighting spirit. They displayed their auras proudly, not bothering to conceal their presence in the slightest. For hours passed, and the humans were now closing in on the No Return Pass. Be it the human race army or the Black Ink clan army, the stronger soldiers now could already see the various deployments of the opposing party clearly. At this moment, none of the Black Ink clansmen, including the royal lords, noticed anything abnormal. However, the two Black Ink giant spirit gods standing guard on both sides of the No Return Pass reacted as though they had discovered something. One of the Black Ink giant spirit gods grabbed a universe fragment from nearby and hurled it into the distance, just like how he had attacked Yang Kai several months ago. The rather large universe fragment shot through the void at a high speed, but under the astonished gaze of the Black Ink clan, it did not hurtle towards the human race army, but instead soared off into the empty middle void. Then, the two giant spirit gods began to hurl universe fragment after universe fragment into the void without pause. A great surge of anxiety immediately washed over Emonayi at the sight. According to the original plans, the Black Ink giant spirit gods were supposed to use this tactic against the human race army once the war began. They were responsible for guarding the No Return Pass, so they could not move around easily. Nevertheless, they could rely on throwing these universe fragments to create a great degree of disturbance to the human race army. If they were lucky, they might even injure their enemies. Even the Eighth Order Masters would not be able to withstand such an attack from these Black Ink Giant Spirit Gods. However, the two Black Ink Giant Spirit Gods had unexpectedly begun to take action before the war started, or the Black Ink Clan army in the No Return Pass engaged the enemy. The sudden turn of events was very different from the original plans. As the two Black Ink Giant Spirit Gods were both soul clones of the Supreme One, Emonayi had no right to criticize them for anything. Be that as it may, he gradually began to notice the abnormality after observing their actions. He looked in the direction where the universe fragments were being thrown, and what entered his field of vision were countless shadows of indescribable size. When he finally caught a clear glimpse of the shadows, his body began to shake involuntarily. At the same time, he felt as though his head was about to explode at the sight. Those shadows were actually enormous universe worlds. He finally realized something about the piece of information that he had neglected before. The reason the human race army had gathered so many universe worlds was not to mine for resources. They were using them as weapons to attack the No Return Pass. With the abilities of the human race, it was not surprising for them to achieve such a feat. It was just that Emonayi never expected them to attack in such an outrageous manner. The Black Ink Clan had only thought of relying on the Black Ink Giant Spirit God's strength to attack the human race army by throwing universe fragments at them. But the humans found a way to do something similar. They had brought the universe worlds to the war. Moreover, there were hundreds of them. It was simply outrageous. In Emonayi's field of vision, the universe world that came first was particularly massive. At the same time, Yang Kai's figure finally appeared on the periphery of a large universe world. He was flying through the void, leading hundreds of unstoppable universe worlds in a torrent behind him. Facing the first universe fragment that the Black Ink Giant Spirit God hurled at him, Yang Kai simply raised his hand slightly and clenched his fist lightly. In response, the universe fragment instantly exploded into dust. Pointless tricks. 10 million kilometers away, Yang Kai looked in the direction of the No Return Pass and grinned at Emonayi. Immediately after that, he summoned the space-time river. The river was like a whip, dancing wildly in the void, smashing all the universe fragments hurtling towards him. Useless. All useless. His voice resounded through the void. Emonayi, there is an old saying among the human race that goes, "It's rude not to reciprocate a kind gesture." The Black Ink Clan delivered pure Yang Pass and a considerable amount of resources to me 20 years ago. So I brought you a generous gift today in return. Please accept my sincerity. Behind the universe fragments, hundreds of Eighth Order Masters shouted in unison. Please accept our sincerity. Their unrestrained and defiant expressions nearly gave Emonayi a heart attack from rage. Likewise, the expressions of the Black Ink Clansmen in the No Return Pass turned increasingly solemn. They would not have worried if they were simply attacked with hundreds of universe worlds. All from the Black Ink Clan Masters were currently assembled in the No Return Pass, so with their combined strength, mere hundreds of universe worlds could easily be destroyed before they even got close. However, the human race army was currently surging towards their left and right flanks. If the Black Ink Clan diverted their strength to intercept these universe worlds, the human army would surely take advantage of their distraction. On the other hand, the impact on the No Return Pass would be too much if they simply ignored the universe worlds. The Black Ink Clan Masters might not be too affected, but those with lower cultivation would definitely suffer heavy casualties. Any possible casualties were merely their secondary concern, however, as their primary worry was that the impact of such an attack might threaten the safety of the Black Ink nests. After all, Black Ink nests were all extremely fragile. At this moment, the intention of the humans was extremely clear. The two groups pressing them from either side abruptly increased their speed, so that they arrived at the same time as the universe worlds. They were planning to completely overwhelm the Black Ink Clan from all sides. It was too late to reposition the troops at this point, so all Emonayi could do was make some subtle adjustments here and there. He relayed order after order to the Black Ink Clan army, and to their credit, the Black Ink Clan army flawlessly executed his commands. The short wait that followed felt like endless torture. As the hundreds of universe worlds drew nearer, their huge shadows seemed to block out the entire sky, causing every single Black Ink clansman to feel a heavy and oppressive pressure. Many Black Ink clan masters also held their breaths and braced themselves against the coming impact. An hour later, the hundreds of universe worlds that were launched from the depths of the void finally entered the attacking range of the Black Ink clan. Nayi swiftly unleashed a secret technique. His actions were immediately followed by an overwhelming wave of attacks that burst out from the no-return pass and blasted towards the distance. Good. Yang Kai pushed his space-time river in front of the lead universe world, coiling it into a giant swirling shield that absorbed and blocked the various secret techniques blasting towards it, causing the water to churn violently. Yang Kai could only endure this barrage for 10 breaths before he began to buckle under the pressure. His strength was impressive and his attainments in the Grand Daos were extremely profound. Nevertheless, it was an extravagant hope to withstand the combined attacks of so many masters from the Black Ink clan. If he stubbornly insisted on this course of action, the very foundation of his Grand Daos would be affected once the space-time river was damaged. After uttering such haughty words, Yang Kai decisively dodged to the side. Without his interference, the enormous universe world was blasted apart by the rain of secret techniques that came flying over in the next moment. The universe world shattered to pieces and scattered about at the same time. The human army approaching the no-return pass unleashed a volley of attacks. The void immediately lit up in various colors of all intensities. Then, these lights streaked across space like shooting stars and rained down upon the no-return pass. Marshall Peak. Chapter 5873, Double the Impact. Countless Black Ink clan miscellaneous troops were stationed along the outermost edges of the no-return pass, and their numbers were overwhelming in every sense of the word. This formation was the most commonly used tactic by the Black Ink clan. Throughout the years of constant conflict with the human race, the Black Ink clan often relied upon the sacrifice of their cannon fodder to shave away at the strength of the humans at the outset of battle. After all, they could spawn as many of these miscellaneous troops as they wanted as long as they had Black Ink nests and resources. That was why the Black Ink clan remained unaffected by the deaths of these troops, no matter how many of them died. Besides, the existence of the cannon fodder could do more than just wear down the strength of the human race army. Following the deaths of the countless lower soldiers, the Black Ink's strength in their bodies would permeate their surroundings and gather together to form dense Black Ink clouds. It was equivalent to artificially creating a battlefield that was advantageous to the Black Ink clan. Fighting under such circumstances was undoubtedly disadvantageous for the human race army, but the Black Ink clan took to such conditions like how fish took to the water. In the past, the humans used to be greatly hindered by this tactic and suffered heavy casualties as a result. Fortunately, they had the purifying Black Ink pills and purifying light nowadays. The existence of the purifying Black Ink pills and purifying light drastically reduced the deterrent effect of these tactics on them, but they could not ignore the detrimental effects completely. There were bound to be some remaining effects from fighting the Black Ink clan under these conditions for extended periods. After the first volley of fire from the human race army, countless Black Ink clan troops were blasted into a cloud of blood mist, and the entire periphery of the no-return pass, facing the Black Ink battlefield, was gradually covered in Black Ink strength. When the human race masters launched their offensive, the Black Ink clan masters in the no-return pass were busy intercepting the universe worlds that came hurtling down their center. One after another, the universe worlds were blown apart into fragments of varying sizes that still hurtled towards the no-return pass. The scene was a huge mess. Fortunately, the human race army had prepared many universe worlds. Moreover, they did not pack them too closely together. Despite suffering some losses, the damages did not affect the overall situation. Nevertheless, more than 50 of the universe worlds were destroyed in the blink of an eye. At this rate, the universe worlds would all be completely destroyed before they could even cause any damage to the no-return pass. But how could the humans simply allow the Black Ink clan to do so? The Black Ink clan's cannon fodder stationed around the outermost edges of the no-return pass suffered heavy casualties, and enormous gaps soon appeared in the defense line that they formed. Although a steady stream of these miscellaneous troops rushed forward fearlessly to replenish their lines and fill the gaps, the reinforcements could no longer keep up with the speed of the losses. The human army steadily approached from opposite sides, In addition, the continuous barrage of secret techniques and artifacts that blasted out of the huge fleet and shot in the direction of the no-return pass forced the Black Ink clan to rely on the Black Ink giant spirit gods to intercept the attacks. Looking down from outside the battlefield, the scene of the war was extremely magnificent. Both the Black Ink clan and the human race had made extensive preparations for the battle. Numerous attacks containing violent and destructive power rose from their respective camps only to fall towards the opposing one. The battle was in full swing. Many masters from the Black Ink clan were being increasingly restrained by the forces of the human race army that were closing in, so they could only watch as the hundreds of universe worlds and fragments approached the no-return pass. The sight left them feeling powerless and anxious. At this moment, Mo Na Yi was inside the no-return pass. He was simultaneously summoning various secret techniques to intercept the attacks from the human race army and monitoring the movement of his surroundings with his divine sense. Despite his calm demeanor on the surface, he was actually racked with anxiety for one simple reason. Yang Kai was gone. When the universe worlds came flying towards the no-return pass, Yang Kai had been standing atop the biggest one leading the way. Be that as it may, he had vanished without a trace after the universe world was smashed to pieces by the combined forces of the Black Ink clan. Yang Kai's sudden disappearance sent a chill down Mo Na Yi's spine. Unknown dangers were the most terrifying, especially when a master like Yang Kai was involved. It would not be a good thing for the Black Ink clan if Yang Kai concealed his figure and aura, then took advantage of the chaos to infiltrate the no-return pass. After a quick look around, Mo Na Yi was relieved to see that many of the pseudo-royal lords were still following his previous instructions and arrangements. The pseudo-royal lords were in 3 fortunes battle formations, which allowed them to guard each other's backs. In this way, they could protect themselves to a certain degree if Yang Kai suddenly appeared and launched a sneak attack on them. As for the territory lords below the pseudo-royal lords, there was no helping them. They could only blame their poor luck if they were targeted by Yang Kai. With Yang Kai's current status and cultivation, while he might not even care enough to specifically target these territory lords, there was still a possibility that he would eliminate them in passing. The ongoing battle remained unchanged. Although the Black Ink clan suffered heavy casualties, their losses mainly came from the ranks of their cannon fodder, while the masters were mostly unharmed. On the other hand, the human race also suffered some degree of loss. Some of the warships out front had been damaged, and a few were completely destroyed. Of course, there were casualties among the soldiers too. Be that as it may, Mo Na Yi was not optimistic about the situation. Anybody with a discerning eye could see that humans had carefully planned and prepared their attack today. The Black Ink clan was bound to pay an expensive price in this battle. The human race army rapidly closed in on the no-return pass from both sides, and the hundreds of universe worlds flying forward approached the no-return pass at a high speed. These universe worlds were constantly being blown up as they closed in. It was fortunate that the Eighth Order masters controlling these universe worlds quickly noticed the danger and escaped beforehand. If not, they could not have defended themselves from the dense storm of attacks raining down on them. Ultimately, though, the Black Ink clan found themselves lacking the necessary numbers to handle the situation. Even though the Black Ink clan desperately tried to defend themselves, they simply lacked the manpower to face both the human race army and the universe world attack at the same time. An hour into the confrontation, one of the universe worlds finally broke through layers of heavy blockades and slammed into the Black Ink clan's outermost line of defense. At the moment of collision, the spirit arrays arranged on the universe world suddenly blazed with light and illuminated the entire sky like a great sun. The spectacle was immediately followed by the grand explosion of the universe world, which detonated with a terrifying force. It could be seen that the power of the spirit arrays was impressive indeed. It only took a moment for the Black Ink clan soldiers in the vicinity to be wiped out completely. Even a few of the territory lords staggered backwards from the force of the explosion. Meanwhile, the auras of many feudal lords vanished from existence. The expressions of many Black Ink clansmen changed at that sight, as they gained a new understanding of their predicament. These universe worlds hurtling towards the no-return pass did not just contain enormous momentum, but were also covered in various dangerous spirit arrays. That was what made these universe worlds even more terrifying. Unfortunately, their realization came too late. After one universe world broke through the Black Ink clan's defense perimeter, a second and a third quickly followed. Although the majority of the universe worlds were destroyed en route, the human race army was extremely well prepared. In fact, they even went so far as to exhaust all their remaining resources just to arrange the spirit arrays on so many universe worlds. The places along the line of defense that were struck by the universe worlds were in complete disarray. There were countless casualties, and several spots now had wide gaps in them. Hence, the Black Ink clan masters nearby were rushing to restore the defense perimeter to hold the line. Nevertheless, this was just the beginning. At this point, the true power of the human race army had yet to be displayed. The previous exchange had merely been a long-distance confrontation, and the attack relying upon the collision of the universe worlds was simply borrowed from external forces. The power of the humans itself remained hidden from sight. Emonaya's heart sank. Before the war began, he had already mentally prepared himself for the fact that the Black Ink clan would suffer considerable losses. However, it would now seem that they were going to take far more casualties than he originally expected. All of a sudden, he turned his head to look in a certain direction. 3 pseudo-royal lords were standing along the line of defense in that direction. They had formed the Three Fortunes formation, and were working together to attack one of the incoming universe worlds. This universe world had almost made it to the defense line at this point. Just as the universe world was about to collide with the outermost perimeter, it was abruptly stopped and exploded thanks to the joint attack of the 3 pseudo-royal lords. The huge impact unleashed a shockwave that caused ripples to spread out across the void in all directions, and the figures of the 3 pseudo-royal lords involuntarily staggered from the resulting aftermath. "Watch out!" Emonaya's furious roar suddenly rang out in the ears of the 3 pseudo-royal lords. Their reaction was undeniably swift. Almost at the same time that Emonaya shouted his warning, they drew upon their respective power and blasted their strongest attack in a certain direction. In that direction, a figure suddenly emerged from the space that was originally empty. It was none other than Yang Kai, who had gone missing previously. Nobody knew how Yang Kai had infiltrated the defenses of the Black Ink clan, or when he had appeared at that position. After his 3 selves united, he successfully mastered Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, which gave him an unmatched advantage in terms of concealment. Only a royal lord could perceive his movements and whereabouts within a limited range. If the pseudo-royal lords had investigated their surroundings wholeheartedly, they might have had a chance to notice his approach. Unfortunately, it was impossible for the pseudo-royal lords to see through the traces of Yang Kai's movements under such chaotic conditions. The chaos had created the perfect conditions for Yang Kai to hide in. Therefore, it was not until he made his move that the 3 pseudo-royal lords noticed his presence. Emonaya's warning had sounded at roughly the same time. When the sound of the surging river entered the depth of their hearts, the 3 pseudo-royal lords involuntarily gulped nervously as a wave of fear washed over them. Yang Kai's achievements in E5 territory had long since spread throughout the no-return pass. At this point, not a single Black Ink clansman remained ignorant about that tragedy. A total of 8 pseudo-royal lords had died at Yang Kai's hands, all thanks to the mysterious Dao strength river he possessed. As the saying went, a lesson from the past was a guide for the future. The deep-seated fear of Yang Kai experienced by these 3 pseudo-royal lords could be said to come from the bottom of their hearts. Accompanied by the sound of roaring water that resounded throughout the void, the Dao strength river appeared and swept towards the 3 pseudo-royal lords like a flood. It was natural to try to avoid such attacks as soon as possible under normal circumstances. After all, they would never recover if they were caught in the currents of the Dao strength river. Unexpectedly though, the 3 pseudo-royal lords did not dodge the attack immediately. On the contrary, their fighting spirits seemed to awaken at this juncture of life or death. The aura that was closely connected between them became increasingly solid as a result, as they swiftly blasted out a continuous barrage of attacks at the Dao strength river sweeping towards them. The Dao strength river, which was relatively calm in the beginning, abruptly churned violently. As the bombardment from the pseudo-royal lords intensified, The waves of the Dao Strength River swelled to greater heights. Yang Kai, who was holding the Dao Strength River in his hand, involuntarily gave a muffled grunt. At the same time, the strength of his offensive weakened considerably as a result. Seeing that, the three pseudo-royal lords were overjoyed as they also secretly felt a sense of admiration and respect for Mo Na Yi. Sir Mo Na Yi is a hero indeed. His instructions were indeed an effective method to counter Yang Kai's Dao Strength River. The truth was that Mo Na Yi had taught the pseudo-royal lords various methods and strategies to counter Yang Kai's Dao Strength River after the battle in E5 territory. Not only did he confront Yang Kai inside the universe furnace, but he was also swept into the space-time river by Yang Kai once and broke free from its restraints thanks to various circumstances. That was why he had a certain degree of understanding regarding the Dao Strength River. Martial Peak. Chapter 5874 Fake and Real. The battle at E5 territory had resulted in great losses for the Black Ink clan. The deaths of 8 pseudo-royal lords had left Mou and Mo Na Yi heartbroken. They no longer had the means to increase the number of pseudo-royal lords anymore. So there would be one less pseudo-royal lord with every death. After that incident, Mo Na Yi had seriously considered various methods to overcome Yang Kai's Dao Strength River. He knew that the mysterious river was condensed from Yang Kai's Dao strengths, but since it was a physical manifestation of Dao strengths, it could theoretically be damaged. Combined with his experience from fighting Yang Kai inside the universe furnace, he eventually came to a conclusion. Blindly dodging and retreating from an attack launched by Yang Kai's Dao Strength River would only lead to a delayed death. Only by facing the attack head-on and striking at it with a mighty force could one defend themselves against him. Naturally, this was only a hypothesis and the actual results of confronting Yang Kai with such methods could not be confirmed. When Yang Kai abruptly appeared and launched a sneak attack on the 3 pseudo-royal lords, Mo Na Yi had swiftly rushed over to assist. At the same time, he also widened his eyes and observed the situation intently to verify whether his theory was correct. As soon as he saw the 3 pseudo-royal lords defending themselves against the Dao Strength River with their combined strength, his heavy mood lightened considerably. Sure enough, his suggestion was effective. Yang Kai was not invincible after all. Having advanced to the 9th Order Open Heaven realm, Yang Kai was very strong. Nevertheless, the most threatening ability in his arsenal was currently his Dao Strength River. The main reason the pseudo-royal lords in E5 territory had suffered such huge losses was that they had never encountered such a strange method before. With no means to defend themselves, they were caught off guard and suffered horribly. As long as the Black Ink clan had the means to suppress the Dao Strength River, then Yang Kai's threat to the Black Ink clan would be reduced greatly. Needless to say, achieving such a feat would not be easy. Having 3 pseudo-royal lords working together to establish a battle formation was the minimum requirement. Oh, in the center of the battlefield, Yang Kai made an astonished exclamation as he observed 3 pseudo-royal lords before him. Although he was surprised by this development, he had to admit that their response was certainly the correct method to resist him. The approach of taking the offensive and advancing relentlessly had certainly suppressed his attack. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Mo Na Yi rushing towards him. The other pseudo-royal lords were also coming over to provide support. At this rate, it would not take long before he was surrounded, but even though the situation was very dangerous, Yang Kai showed no signs of panic. Wielding the Dao Strength River like a whip, he constantly brandished it at the 3 pseudo-royal lords. On his other hand, he suddenly raised his hand above his head and space principles condensed into a brilliant ball of light above his palm. Nobody knew what Yang Kai was planning to do, but looking at Yang Kai's actions gave Mo Na Yi an ominous feeling, and he immediately shouted, "Kill him!" In the next instant, a series of powerful attacks blasted out from Mo Na Yi and the pseudo-royal lords rushing over to help. These attacks landed unerringly in Yang Kai's direction. The space around Yang Kai suddenly became distorted, and under the impetus of the rampaging space principles, those attacks barged into the distorted space like uninvited guests. Then an astonishing phenomenon occurred. The attacks that had originally been traveling at an extremely high speed suddenly became as slow as a crawling turtle after entering the distortion. They were still approaching Yang Kai, but at a speed that was hard to even see. at such a slow speed. Even a 3-year-old child standing there could easily avoid these attacks. Fortunately, Emo Na-yi was very discerning. He could tell at a glance that the secret techniques thrown at Yongkai had not become slower. On the contrary, it was the space that had become extremely distorted. Near distant horizon. This space secret technique might not contain any defensive abilities on its own, but it had great defensive effects. The void surrounding Yongkai's figure was infinitely stretched out thanks to the manipulation of space principles. Even though the secret techniques continued to travel at a terrifying speed, they seemed almost frozen on the spot under the effects of the infinitely stretched out space. At the same time, Yongkai abruptly brought down his hand that was held above his head earlier. Nothing seemed to occur, but be that as it may, the expressions of the 3 pseudo-royal lords facing Yongkai changed drastically in the wake of the seemingly useless blow. A turbulent wave of fear surged through their hearts at that moment, because their intricately linked auras, which had seemed indestructible previously, suddenly fell apart as though sliced by a sharp blade when Yongkai's hand came swinging down. The 3 fortunes formation had been broken. The space-time river swept towards them in the next moment, and unfortunately for them, they no longer had the means to defend themselves against the attack. Without the support of the battle formation, the pseudo-royal lords were no match for Yongkai with their strength alone. One of the pseudo-royal lords was dragged into the depths of the river, and disappeared quickly with a small splash. On the other hand, the second pseudo-royal lord reacted swiftly under the circumstances. As soon as he was caught in the currents of the river, he began to struggle desperately. Unfortunately for him, it was as though he was stuck in a quagmire, and the more he struggled, the faster he sank into the raging waters. The third pseudo-royal lord turned out to be the smartest. As soon as the 3 fortunes formation was destroyed, he immediately turned tail and fled. Even Yongkai could not catch the fleeing pseudo-royal lord in time despite his quick reflexes. At this moment, the barrage of attacks from earlier finally overcame the limits of his near-distant horizon secret technique, and slammed into Yongkai's body. A dazzling golden dragon phantom emerged from nowhere, and coiled around Yongkai's body. When the powerful attacks exploded, the phantom dragon dissipated and Yongkai's body shook violently from the impact. A trickle of blood leaked out from the corner of his mouth as a result. If it were any other Ninth Order master who bore the brunt of these attacks instead, they would inevitably suffer heavy injuries as a result. However, Yongkai was a divine dragon. By relying on the physique of a divine dragon to protect him, he only suffered minor injuries from these attacks. That was an advantage that no other Ninth Order master enjoyed. The Dragon Clan stood at the top of the divine spirits after all, so it was only natural for them to possess incredible strength. Emo Na-yi was close at hand and a howl burst from his lips. "Yongkai! Why are you calling my name?" Yongkai sneered and took a step backwards. At the same time, his figure suddenly turned into an illusory phantom and space principles fluctuated wildly. Emo Na-yi's fist landed on the illusory phantom, causing it to shatter. Unfortunately, Yongkai was nowhere to be found by then. Yongkai's laughter came from the distance. "Who can stop me if I am determined to eliminate your pseudo-royal lords?" Emo Na-yi turned and looked in the direction of Yongkai's voice only to see Yongkai standing at the head of the Dao Strength River. The waters in the Dao Strength River were turbulent, churning and roiling violently. At a glance, it almost seemed as though Yongkai was standing on top of a dragon. It was a magnificent and majestic sight to behold. If there was no other external aggression threatening the Black Ink clan, Emo Na-yi would not have allowed Yongkai to be so arrogant. Unfortunately, the human race army was pressing their attack, and there were still many universe worlds threatening to impact the no-return pass. Even now, Emo Na-yi was powerless to rescue the 2 pseudo-royal lords who were captured earlier. Yongkai glanced at Emo Na-yi coldly, and then he turned around and plunged into the river. In the next moment, the movements within the space-time river became more turbulent. It was evident that masters were fighting inside. Just 10 breaths later, Yongkai's figure appeared once more with a corpse in each hand. It was none other than the 2 pseudo-royal lords whom he dragged into the river previously. All the Black Ink clansmen who witnessed the scene couldn't help feeling a sense of sympathy for their comrades. The war had yet to begin in earnest, but the Black Ink clan had already lost 2 pseudo-royal lords. While there were indeed many pseudo-royal lords, their numbers would not be enough to endure for long at this rate. What happened next terrified the Black Ink clan even more. Yang Kai held up the corpses of the 2 pseudo-royal lords in a demonstrative manner. Then he casually tossed them aside and withdrew the space-time river. In the next moment, his figure vanished out of sight once more. The pseudo-royal lords were in mortal danger, and the realization caused a chill to run down their backs. Moreover, they all now felt that Yang Kai was watching them intently from the shadows, harboring malicious intentions towards them. Contrary to the reaction of the Black Ink clan, the morale of the human race army increased sharply after they witnessed Yang Kai infiltrating the enemy camp alone and reaping the lives of 2 pseudo-royal lords. The attacks shooting out from the human race army and towards the no-return pass became more vicious and concentrated as a result. Furthermore, the human race masters all rolled up their sleeves and prepared to display their respective talents on the battlefield during the coming battle. The barrage of universe worlds also continued. Even though most were destroyed en route, the efforts of the human race army to suppress the Black Ink clan forced the latter to allocate more of their energy towards their own defenses instead. In this situation, they were strong in will but weak in strength. They simply could not maintain their efforts to intercept the incoming universe worlds. Besides, none of the pseudo-royal lords dared to exert their full strength after witnessing Yang Kai's flashy demonstration. Every one of them held back slightly in case of any unforeseen circumstances. Mo Na-yi knew that they had fallen for Yang Kai's tricks. Yang Kai had not infiltrated the enemy camp alone to demonstrate his bravery. Rather, his main purpose was to distract the masters from the Black Ink clan. Despite knowing Yang Kai's intentions, Mo Na-yi could not force the pseudo-royal lords to ignore their own safety and go all out. There was no guarantee that Yang Kai would not attack once more if they let down their defenses. What seemed real could be fake, and what was fake could become real. It could be said that Yang Kai's attack had tied the hands of all the masters of the Black Ink clan. Yang Kai was the only person among the entire human race who could achieve such a feat. The defense line outside the no-return pass was created with the damaged great passes that were abandoned by the human race army in the past as the foundation, and a large number of artifacts had been constructed on these great passes, but the Black Ink disciples were not very adept at artifact refining. After all, those who were proficient in artifact refining generally contributed to the war efforts from the safety of the rear. As they rarely stepped onto the battlefield, they avoided the fate of being captured by the Black Ink clan and converted into Black Ink disciples. It was for that reason that the artifacts prepared in advance by the Black Ink clan were far inferior to those possessed by the humans in terms of both power and attack range. When the human race army first started approaching the no-return pass, the Black Ink clan masters in charge of operating the artifacts could only watch as the enemy marched forward. The defensive artifacts could be activated at any time, but their effects were extremely limited. It was not until the human race army entered the attack range of these artifacts that countless lights began to blaze from the abandoned great passes that surrounded the external perimeter of the no-return pass. Be that as it may, these attacks were nothing to the enormous human fleet. Aside from causing some slight trouble to part of the human army, they did not play an essential role in the war. It did not take long for the human race army to target and suppress them instead. Many gaps had appeared along the middle of the defensive line due to the constant collision of the universe worlds. When the last few universe worlds finally arrived at the no-return pass and detonated, the gap in the defense line only became bigger. At the same time, the human race army deployed a massive number of troops straight towards the gaps without the slightest hesitation. It was clear that they were aiming to use these gaps in the Black Ink clan's lines to rout the Black Ink clan's defense entirely. If they succeeded, then they could march right in and conquer the no-return pass without obstruction. The no-return pass currently contained all of the high-ranked Black Ink nests of the Black Ink clan. If the human race army invaded the no-return pass, the high-ranked Black Ink nests would inevitably suffer extensive losses regardless of the outcome of the battle. There was no question that such losses would affect the production of more Black Ink clansmen, as well as the healing of their masters. How could Mo Na-yi allow such a thing to happen? He immediately mobilized many masters and led the Black Ink army to intercept those invaders. Marshall Peak. Chapter 5875. The First Attack on the No Return Pass. The opening of the first battle of the No Return Pass was fought at long range, and although the humans gained a huge advantage, it did not fundamentally change the situation. To really retake the No Return Pass, they still had to rely on their soldiers to engage in close-quarter combat with the Black Ink Clan. The Blood Flame, Wolf Fang, Soaring Cloud, Burning Moon, Azure Dawn, and Jade Cicada armies flooded over like a raging tidal wave, pouring through the gaps in the Black Ink Clan defense line. The remaining 6 armies continued their assault from the left and right flanks of the No Return Pass, holding down the Black Ink Clan masters and army as best they could. As the human army continued to tighten its encirclement, the battle between the two sides became more and more intense. There were constant sounds of death all across the battlefield from both the Black Ink Clan and the humans. Across the vast conflict zone, aside for the few masters who stood at the pinnacle, the might of an individual became insignificant. However, the synergistic power of combined forces became more than simple numbers would imply. When this was applied on the battlefield, a scenario of death by 1,000 cuts became a reality. The Black Ink Clan tried their best to stem the attack, but the strain they were under from the outset of the battle caused their response to be weaker than the opponents'. Their resistance only lasted less than half an hour before the 6 human race armies broke through the defense perimeter and stormed through the gaps. The human soldiers soon reached the broken Great Passes, which once belonged to the human race, but had been abandoned for thousands of years. Warships sailed through and struck the enemy with secret techniques and artifacts while dodging the enemy's counterattacks with astonishing agility. This was the first battle of the human race Grand Army at the No Return Pass, so they needed to achieve a spectacular victory. Mi Jingluan did not expect to retake the No Return Pass in one fell swoop. After all, that was simply unrealistic. Nevertheless, momentum and morale were key factors in winning any war. The ultimate goal of the battle was determined even before the army was mobilized: inflict maximum damage on the enemy while minimizing their own casualties. With such an objective, the human warships did not act as lone squads, but rather moved as battalions. Squad worked in units of 8 or 9, protecting each other, advancing and retreating together, so that they could maximize the advantages of the warships and attack the enemy while preserving themselves. The masters of the two sides had also taken action against each other. The 8th Order Masters, Territory Lords, and Pseudo-Royal Lords all opened up separate battlefields where they aimed to slaughter each other. The humans now had many more 8th Order Masters than the Black Ink Clan had Territory Lords. Thousands of years ago, the situation was completely different. At that time, the 8th Order Masters struggled to resist the swarm of Territory Lords, and fought every battle with all their might to kill the enemy, every time receiving various hard-to-recover from wounds. Ouyang Lai, for example, was afraid to take the supreme Great Open Heaven pill given to him by Yang Kai because of the accumulation of such wounds in his body. He was concerned that he might fail in his breakthrough and waste a chance for a potential 9th Order Master. In the end, he succeeded and reached the 9th Order, becoming Army Commander of Profound Nether Army. Back when the situation of the humans was critical, the Profound Nether battlefield was nearly captured by the Black Ink Clan, because they lacked top masters. The main reason why they were able to hold out at the time was because the 8th Order Masters were bold enough to put their lives on the line when they went to war. Additionally, they had battle formations and warships to assist them. However, all of this was not enough to counter the Black Ink Clan's overwhelming numerical advantage. It was not until Yang Kai stepped in and forced the Black Ink Clan to sign a truce that the situation of the 8th Order Masters became better. Otherwise, many more veteran 8th Order Masters would have died. Today, after thousands of years of accumulation, the heritage of the human race has become unprecedentedly strong. There were numerous rising stars who had become 8th Order Masters, and now, 8th Order Masters completely outnumbered the Territory Lords, and were capable of completely suppressing them. Moreover, the strength of an acquired Territory Lords was generally inferior to that of an 8th Order Master, not to mention their lesser numbers. However, the Black Ink Clan also had a great number of Pseudo-Royal Lords on their side. Each Pseudo-Royal Lord had the ability to deal with a 5 elements or even 6 paths formation formed by 8th Order Masters. Worse, in order to defend against Yang Kai, Pseudo-royal lords would group in threes to form their own battle formations, making them much more difficult to deal with. Except for the Ninth Order Masters who could deal with the Three Fortunes formation formed by pseudo-royal lords, the Eighth Order Masters had to assume a 5 elements or even 6 paths formation to deal with a single pseudo-royal lord. In other words, 3 pseudo-royal lords in a battle formation would keep around 20 or even more Eighth Order Masters occupied, which greatly compensated for the lack of territory lords. However, due to their fear of Yang Kai, none of the pseudo-royal lords in their respective formations dared to use all their strength. All of them reserved some of their strength and diverted part of their attention to guard against Yang Kai's sneak attack. Therefore, from how it looked, the Eighth Order Masters in battle formations had the upper hand over the pseudo-royal lords also in battle formations. This situation was quite bizarre. As soon as the human race army bypassed the Great Pass's defensive line, they immediately set about annihilating everything they could reach. Soldiers of both sides scattered on the vast battlefield, and fought so violently that the void trembled under their collective impact. Blooms of evil purging divine spears appeared everywhere, resulting in the Black Ink clan suffering terrible losses. The human stockpile of evil purging divine spears was fully distributed for this battle, as there was no need to worry about supplies anymore. The human race was going all out for this battle. Not long after the 6 human race armies attacking overwhelmed the Black Ink clan defense line, the 6 remaining armies on the left and right flanks also broke through the Black Ink clan's defense line, circumventing the broken Great Passes, and meeting the Black Ink clan in close quarters. The whole area outside the No-Return Pass was now embroiled in the flames of war. MOU! A roar suddenly sounded from somewhere in the void, and with that roar, a magnificent figure crashed through the Black Ink clan's blockade with unstoppable power. As MOU said to Mo Nayi before the battle, once the fighting started, the Ninth Order Masters would definitely come to him. According to the information that the humans had, he and Mo Nayi were the only 2 royal lords. Thus, suppressing them would greatly benefit the humans in battle. MOU's prophecy came true when he was approached by none other than Xiang Shan. MOU was prepared for such a situation. And now that Xiang Shan had called him out, he would not avoid the fight. After Xiang Shan's roar, MOU rushed out from the No-Return Pass, his black ink strength surging as it transformed into a huge black ink cloud that covered the sky and enveloped the approaching enemy. A fierce struggle began within the black ink cloud, before swiftly moving outside the No-Return Pass. A battle between a Ninth Order Master and a Royal Lord was so intense that if they did not move away from the main battlefield, there would be severe collateral damage to both the humans and the Black Ink clan. Emonai! Another roar came from the human race army. Seeing that Xiang Shan had successfully lured Mou away, Ouyang Lai was ready to take on the other royal lord. According to their original plan, as long as he pinned down Mo Nayi, then the 2 royal lords would be too busy to coordinate the Black Ink clan, including the 2 Black Ink giant spirit gods. Thus, even if they were not able to kill the 2 royal lords, the entire Black Ink clan army would become leaderless. However, as soon as Ouyang Lai moved, a group of pseudo-royal lords in a 3 fortunes formation blocked his way. There were more 8th Order Masters in the profound Nether army to help, but the Black Ink clan also had territory lords and the other pseudo-royal lords who were moving towards them. With Ouyang Lai at the center, human and Black Ink clan masters engaged in a ruthless melee. Ouyang Lai was so angry that he shouted as he fought with the 3 pseudo-royal lords, Mo Nayi, if you have the guts, come out and fight with me alone. However, no matter how much Ouyang Lai shouted, Mo Nayi remained unperturbed, and ignored him as he remained inside the No-Return Pass to oversee the situation. With a huge potential threat like Yang Kai lurking in the shadows, Mo Nayi would not care about Ouyang Lai. From his standpoint, the biggest threat from the humans was Yang Kai. While the human race army attacked from 3 sides, Yang Kai was repeatedly using both Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability and his own space-time river. Needless to say, he made gains almost every time he struck. All pseudo-royal lords throughout the battlefield were his prey. Even though the pseudo-royal lords were in battle formations and were vigilant of their surroundings, they were still caught off guard when Yang Kai suddenly appeared and struck them. If they were lucky, they could block Yang Kai's attacks and save themselves. However, if they were unlucky, as many as 3 pseudo-royal lords would be caught in his space-time river, and the Black Ink clan knew exactly what would happen once they fell into the raging waters. Yang Kai weaved through the battlefield, swiftly moving from one success to the next. Each time he found an opening, he dove in to kill the cornered pseudo-royal lords. Within a short time, more than a dozen pseudo-royal lords had been killed by these successive ambushes. It could be said that Yang Kai alone had done more than all the other Ninth Order masters combined. This was a huge loss for the Black Ink clan, and Mo Na Yi was getting desperate, but there was nothing he could do about it. He had been trying to keep track of Yang Kai's whereabouts, but with such a huge battlefield and Yang Kai's quick and unpredictable movements, it was impossible to do so. Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, Mo Na Yi knew that things would reach a critical breaking point if he did not do something. He gritted his teeth and looked up at the lofty Great Pass in the void. Pure Yang Pass, which Yang Kai took away from the no-return pass some 20 years ago, had now become the location of the human race's supreme headquarters. It was where their supreme commander, Mi Jingluan, remained and directed the fights on the entire battlefield. After the 12 armies of the human race were fully engaged, Pure Yang Pass became very conspicuous as it remained outside of the battlefield. Martial Peak. Chapter 5876, Battle of Wits. The battlefield was vast and chaotic. In such a situation, it was impossible even for the Ninth Order masters to know what was happening everywhere at all times. Once there was no central coordination and control, the humans' 12 armies were bound to fail even if they broke through all the Black Ink clan's defenses. The Ninth Order master leading each of their armies also had to fight, and did not have much spare energy to observe the general situation. This situation only exacerbated when the armies broke through the initial defenses of the Black Ink clan, as they were then thrown into a chaotic melee, and no longer had a structured formation which was easy to coordinate. Once communications broke down, the situation of each army became more dangerous. If the humans needed help at a particular battlefield, forces needed to be redistributed to maximize benefits without causing detriments. If the humans could exploit the weakness of the Black Ink clan defense, then they could reap twice the results with half the effort. To achieve all this, the 12 armies needed a pair of eyes that could overlook the entire battlefield. It had to be a calm and intelligent mind who could transmit battlefield orders rapidly. The Supreme Headquarters played this role. The soldiers at the Great Pass could see the whole battlefield clearly, and quickly reported the situation from all positions, while Mi Jingluan and his staff were responsible for analyzing the intelligence and formulating plans in the shortest possible time. In this way, the 12 armies would be able to coordinate perfectly as a single unit to pose a deadly threat to the Black Ink clan in the no-return pass. This time, the humans came prepared for the battle. Even the intelligent Mo Na Yi did not expect that the human race would use tactics such as throwing universe worlds filled with arrays to punch through the Black Ink clan's defensive perimeter, causing the Black Ink clansmen in the no-return pass to suffer a considerable loss. Together with Yang Kai's unpredictable ambushes and ruthless kills, the pseudo-royal lords were all at their wits' end. If Yang Kai continued to cut down the pseudo-royal lords, when their number fell below a certain limit, the Black Ink clan may not be able to stop the humans even if they went all out. Therefore, from Black Ink clan's standpoint, they had to find a way to break the humans' current momentum. Mo Na Yi had a direct interest in Pure Yang Pass, or more directly, in Mi Jingluan. Mo Na Yi had never underestimated the importance of Mi Jingluan and the Supreme Headquarters, and had wanted to find a chance to slaughter them all for many years. But unfortunately, Mi Jingluan had not ever appeared on the frontline battlefields, so he could not do anything about him. It was a good opportunity, now that the humans were attacking the no-return pass. However, Pure Yang Pass was going to pose some problems. Although this great pass had not yet displayed its power, it was clearly repaired and refurbished over the past 20 or so years. Mo Na Yi could not estimate how much of its original power Pure Yang Pass could display at the moment, but he did not doubt that if it was brought into the battle, it would cause a huge breakthrough for the human race, and the Black Ink clan would have to pay a huge price to stop it. Even before the fighting started, Mo Na Yi had thought about attacking Pure Yang Pass, and since things had come to this point, it was time for him to act boldly. Many thoughts flashed through his mind as Mo Na Ye's divine sense surged, sending commands in all directions. The next moment, the Black Ink clan army on the battlefield suddenly turned from defense to offense, and many of them rushed towards the human warships. The warships were caught off guard by this sudden onslaught, and many were blown to pieces across the battlefield. The human soldiers inside now did not have the protection of their warships, and were quickly swamped by the boundless Black Ink clan soldiers. Only a few managed to escape by virtue of their strong cultivation. The scene looked like a group of sharks tearing at their bleeding prey. The nearby human soldiers quickly moved to provide assistance, but this barely stabilized the situation. At that moment, Mo Na Ye, who had been watching from the no-return pass, lunged forward. Along with him, 12 other figures rushed out from the no-return pass. Judging from the unmistakable auras, those were 12 pseudo-royal lords. There were numerous Black Ink clan pseudo-royal lords. Not all of them were deployed to the battlefield in the previous wars. It was estimated that only 70% of them fought on the battlefield, while the remaining 30% were recuperating in the no-return pass. They did this to preserve their strength and to guard the no-return pass. After all, Yang Kai could turn up at any moment to harass them, so Mo Na Ye did not dare to relax his vigilance. If Yang Kai rushed into the no-return pass and stirred up chaos, the high-ranked Black Ink nests would be decimated. So even though 12 more pseudo-royal lords were coming out of the no-return pass, there were still a good number of pseudo-royal lords engaged in the main battle. Mo Na Ye attacked together with the 12 pseudo-royal lords along with a large army of 1 million Black Ink clansmen, including many feudal lords and territory lords. This conspicuous army rushed towards the disrupted human lines, and even though the human army at that location tried their best to intercept them, they were unable to contain the enemy thrust. The human defensive line was torn apart by the Black Ink clan attack in a short while. 1 million bloodthirsty and ruthless Black Ink clan soldiers flowed through the gap like a torrent. Led by Mo Na Ye and the 12 pseudo-royal lords, they charged straight towards the direction of Pyongyang Pass, their objective obvious to all. The humans on the nearby battlefield saw this, and although they wanted to intercept, they were unable to. In the next moment, Mo Na Ye, who was leading the army, suddenly stopped, while the 12 pseudo-royal lords and the million-strong army continued their rampage, as if they were not aware of this and still charged in the direction of Pyongyang Pass. Mo Na Ye turned his head and shouted in the direction of the no-return pass, "Yang Kai!" He thought that if he showed any intention of attacking Pyongyang Pass, Yang Kai would definitely show up and stop him. However, Mo Na Ye never thought that the cunning Yang Kai would instead head straight for the no-return pass. Before the pseudo-royal lords at the no-return pass could react, he quickly destroyed 2 high-ranked Black Ink nests. The pseudo-royal lords were not to be blamed for this as they had no way to conceal their auras. Thus, they all stuck out like cranes among chickens in Yang Kai's senses. All he needed to do was to choose the places where the pseudo-royal lord's defenses were the weakest, and then he could do whatever he wanted. It was only then that several pseudo-royal lords nearby reacted and rushed to stop Yang Kai, starting a huge fight with him. This battle rocked the no-return pass, and the fallout was devastating, decimating several more high-ranked Black Ink nests. Mo Na Ye quickly turned around and headed for the no-return pass, with his heart aching over the losses. Like the pseudo-royal lords, the high-ranked Black Ink nests could not be replaced. Without these high-ranked Black Ink nests, how could the Black Ink clans create more soldiers? If the high-ranked Black Ink nests were all destroyed, the Black Ink clan of the no-return pass would become a river without a source. Their defeat would be inevitable once that happened. By the time Mo Na Ye rushed back to the no-return pass and entered the battlefield, 6 high-ranked Black Ink nests had already been destroyed. Upon seeing this, Mo Na Ye bellowed, "Leave one formation behind, the others guard the Black Ink nests." Upon hearing his order, the pseudo-royal lords who were ordered to stay with Mo Na Ye joined him in battling Yang Kai, while the rest of the pseudo-royal lords formed 3 fortunes formations to guard their surrounding areas. Yang Kai did not continue his attacks on the no-return pass. Instead, he took a step back, dashed past the group of pseudo-royal lords as he glared at Mo Na Ye. The 3 pseudo-royal lords did not dare to chase after him, but approached Mo Na Ye and stood beside him. At this moment, Mo Na Ye looked at Yang Kai with his eyes blazing and gritted his teeth. "Bastard! Yang Kai smiled smugly and taunted. Why do you look so bitter? You deployed your troops against Pyongyang Pass, and you expect me not to do anything? Wasn't your intention to draw me out? You should be happy that you achieved your goal. Mo Nayi looked at him with a deep frown, and his anger slowly eased as he said with a frown, You saw through my intentions. However, he was not faking his anger. Since the beginning of the war, more than a dozen pseudo-royal lords had been killed by Yang Kai, and now half a dozen high-ranked black ink nests had been smashed. Even if Mo Nayi had a steady temperament, it was impossible for him not to be furious. However, his anger was not as intense as expected. Yang Kai raised his hand, pointed to his eyes, and asked as he glared, Do you know what these are? Mo Nayi's mind raced and asked in return doubtfully, What? Eyes. Yang Kai replied, I'm not blind. Mo Nayi was flabbergasted. Although the battle was in full swing outside the no-return pass, two top masters were simply staring at each other inside the no-return pass. They just stared and talked to each other without fighting. However, the tension was very tense and treacherous. Moments later, Mo Nayi quickly asked, Has Mi Jingluan broken through to the Ninth Order? What makes you think so? Yang Kai asked with a puzzled expression. The Black Ink clan should not know about Mi Jingluan becoming a Ninth Order master. Even if they found out about the two newly promoted Ninth Order masters, it should have been impossible for Mo Nayi to know Mi Jingluan had also broken through. Mo Nayi replied with a shrug, It's obvious. Originally, I had already guessed that Mi Jingluan might have become a Ninth Order master. After the battle in the Universe Furnace, the Universe Furnace world became a hunting ground for the humans. The humans might have obtained another supreme-grade open heaven pill, and the most logical person to take it would be Mi Jingluan, but that was all only a guess. When I saw how you reacted just now though, I became 80% certain. Marshall Peak. Chapter 5877. Of course I can. So that's how it is. Yang Kai appeared to be enlightened. The attack on Pyongyang Pass was not only to lure me out, but also to verify your suspicions. After a pause, Yang Kai continued, Your main purpose must be the latter. At this point, there was no point in denying it, as the 12 pseudo-royal lords led a million-strong Black Ink clan army towards the Pyongyang Pass, which was outside the battlefield. There was no longer a way to hide the fact that Mi Jingluan had advanced to become a Ninth Order master. If Mi Jingluan was still only an 8th Order master, Yang Kai would have to go to their rescue instead of boldly attacking the no-return pass. Since Yang Kai appeared in the no-return pass, it meant that he was at ease about Mi Jingluan's safety, and in such a large-scale battlefield, only a Ninth Order master was able to guarantee their own safety. Mo Nayi shook his head and said, No, the main reason was still to lure you out and pin you down. Yang Kai, you must not underestimate yourself. Everyone from the royal lords down to the ordinary Black Ink clansman fears you deeply. Yang Kai grinned and replied, Should I feel honored? Do as you please, I'm just speaking the truth. Mo Nayi stared at Yang Kai, as did the 3 pseudo-royal lords standing beside him. None of them let their guard down even when Mo Nayi was having a conversation with Yang Kai, and any abnormal movement would result in a violent exchange between them. This was also the reason why Yang Kai was willing to stand here and chat with Mo Nayi. Otherwise, he would have already used instantaneous movement to disappear to somewhere else on the battlefield to kill more enemies. However, Mo Nayi had locked onto him using his aura. Thus, even if he tried to use instantaneous movement, it would have been disrupted. After a moment of silence, Yang Kai suddenly said, Since you have guessed that senior brother Mi had become a Ninth Order master, aren't you worried about the safety of those pseudo-royal lords? As they spoke, the 12 pseudo-royal lords and the million-strong Black Ink clan army had already closed in on Pyongyang Pass. The two sides would clash violently at any moment. If Mi Jingluan was still an 8th Order master, then the Black Ink clan would have had a great chance to capture the Great Pass and kill Mi Jingluan. However, now that Mo Nayi knew that Mi Jingluan was already in the Ninth Order, it made no sense for him to continue the attack. It was foolish for them to charge towards danger with no possibility of gains. Mo Nayi couldn't make such a choice. However, that was exactly what he did. Mo Nayi replied nonchalantly, Why should I worry? Yang Kai frowned when he heard that. If he did not worry about the safety of his attacking army, then did that mean that the humans needed to worry? At that moment, he saw the Black Ink clan army from the no-return pass making a very different move. Just as they closed to the defensive perimeter of Pyongyang Pass, this army, led by 12 pseudo-royal lords, suddenly turned around and charged back towards the battlefield. In that direction, human and Black Ink clan soldiers were in an evenly matched fight with neither side able to send reinforcements within a short period of time. A large army would be able to change the situation of that local battlefield and allow the Black Ink clan to gain the upper hand if they rushed over at this moment. Yang Kai's expression changed instantly and said, "So this is your plan?" Mo Na Yi ordered the 12 pseudo-royal lords to lead a million-strong Black Ink clan army to attack Pyongyang Pass, hold Yang Kai back, and verify Mi Jingluan's advancement to the Ninth Order, but his ultimate objective was to wheel around and attack the humans from behind to create an advantage for the Black Ink clan. Mo Na Yi, Yang Kai raged. Mo Na Yi just said that his main purpose was to hold Yang Kai back, which made him lower his guard. However, even that was a deception. Yang Kai was particularly annoyed with Mo Na Yi at this moment, who could somehow turn an unfavorable situation around with clever tactics and deliver a blow to his enemies they never expected. Yang Kai nearly died when he intercepted the innate territory lords who had escaped from Primordial Heaven's source Grand Restriction, thanks to a similar scheme. If it was not for the Universe Furnace's sudden appearance at the critical moment, Yang Kai might not have survived. In Pyongyang Pass, Mi Jingluan looked from the top of the walls at the Black Ink clan army, which was getting farther and farther away from Pyongyang Pass. He then looked over in the direction of the no-return pass and sighed lightly. "Seems I've been exposed." Before the battle began, he had thought of using himself as bait to lure the Black Ink clan to attack. His advancement to the Ninth Order was only now known to the higher-ups of the human race while the Black Ink clan was totally unaware. Therefore, after the battle started, the 12 armies all pressed forward, leaving Pyongyang Pass vulnerable outside the battlefield. This was to send a message to the Black Ink clan and Mo Na Yi. The supreme headquarters is on Pyongyang Pass, and Mi Jingluan is also on Pyongyang Pass. As long as the Black Ink clan could take down Pyongyang Pass, then the humans would become blind and deaf. When that happened, regardless of how strong the humans were, even if they could recapture the supreme headquarters, they would eventually be defeated. This deception was initially successful. Mo Na Yi had an army charge towards Pyongyang Pass, but just when they were about to engage each other, the pseudo-royal lords leading the way turned around and flew back to the battlefield. Their target had always been the human race army. If Black Ink clan defeated the humans at their targeted spot, then the Black Ink clan army would be able to gain a foothold and use that part of the battlefield to expand their advantage. "No need to hide anymore, let's fight," Mi Jingluan said softly. The next moment, numerous figures suddenly shot out from Pyongyang Pass and chased after the Black Ink clan army with the 12 pseudo-royal lords leading them. The two leading figures, with powerful auras, were the two newly promoted Ninth Order Masters of the human race. Right behind them were nearly 200 Eighth Order Masters. Mi Jingluan had used Pyongyang Pass and himself as bait, so naturally, he had made all the necessary arrangements. The garrison of Pyongyang Pass might have seemed obvious at a glance, but under the cover of many concealment arrays, the two newly advanced Ninth Order Masters and a large group of Eighth Order Masters were quietly lying in wait. If the 12 pseudo-royal lords and the million-strong Black Ink clan troops dared to set foot on Pyongyang Pass, they would end up with heavy casualties. For this reason, Mi Jingluan even hid Shi Dezhuang and Tang Tao from the public even when the battles began. However, now that they had been exposed, there was no longer any point in hiding them anymore. They were now Ninth Order Masters. Thus, it was time for them to play a role in the battlefield. The two Ninth Order Masters led some 200 Eighth Order Masters towards the Black Ink clan army, and although their numbers were far less than the enemy, their strength was comparable. The two Ninth Order Masters took point and charged into the enemy army, slicing through it like a hot knife through butter. Black blood splattered with body parts flying everywhere, leaving a trail of dead and dying Black Ink clansmen. It was only when the leading 12 pseudo-royal lords managed to intervene and blunt the human race master's assault, halting the wanton slaughter of their subordinates. So you had 2 more Ninth Order masters. Mo Nayi remarked calmly as he watched Yang Kai closely, able to sense the violent fallout from the clash even from where he stood. The sudden appearance of the 2 Ninth Order masters' auras naturally did not escape his notice. Mo Nayi was actually not surprised by this. Since Black Ink clan had a new royal lord, then the humans could also have new Ninth Order masters. If he counted Mi Jingluan, the humans had 3 more Ninth Orders in just the last 20 years. It was unknown whether the 2 new appearances relied on their own accumulation of cultivation to break through, or did so with the help of supreme-grade open heaven pills. If it was the latter, then it did not matter as the number of supreme-grade open heaven pills were limited and would eventually run out. However, if it was the former, then the situation was untenable. The human race had produced several new Ninth Order masters while the Black Ink clan only gained 1 new royal lord. It was obvious which side had the advantage, and time would only exacerbate the situation. The Black Ink clan is doomed. Yang Kai taunted. Mo Nayi scoffed and replied, "Brother Yang underestimates my Black Ink clan." Oh. Yang Kai frowned and continued. Is it possible that a new royal lord appeared in the Black Ink clan? Which one is it? Why doesn't he introduce himself? Mo Nayi maintained a straight face. If that is the case, you will find out eventually. The answer was so flat and plain it was difficult for Yang Kai to determine if there was a new royal lord in the Black Ink clan or not. He had carefully checked all parts of the no-return pass previously, but did not find anything. He had an ominous feeling when he came to the no-return pass, but could not be sure based on that feeling alone. There were so many masters from the Black Ink clan at the no-return pass right now, so if he was not careful, he could find himself in a critical situation regardless of the truth. So, Mo Nayi lowered his eyes, and his tone suddenly lowered. That's the end of the small talk. Yang Kai raised his brow and asked, "Is it time to fight? No more stalling? I see that your pseudo-royal lords seem to be secretly setting up something. If it's not properly set up, we can chat a while longer." His completely nonchalant attitude made Mo Nayi's flaming rage burst out as he roared. "Yang Kai, you arrogant bastard! Do you really think that the no-return pass is a place where you can come and go as you wish?" Yang Kai looked at him seriously for a long time and then said, "This is the territory of the human race, so of course I can come and go as I please." "Prove it." As soon as Mo Nayi finished his sentence, the no-return pass hummed in all directions, as if there was an invisible power swept through it. In the next instant, this huge stretch underwent a subtle change. This change was extremely inconspicuous, and it was difficult for ordinary people to notice, but Yang Kai only had to scan around to know what happened. He frowned slightly and remarked, "You improved the heaven-sealing earth-locking array?" Marshall Peak. Chapter 5878, The Battle of Courage. The Black Ink clan always wanted to use the 4 Gates 8 Palaces Great Pagoda Array to deal with Yang Kai. However, the Spirit Array was a bit troublesome to set up and could not be done so quickly. On several occasions, the Black Ink clan would be in the middle of setting up the array when Yang Kai suddenly dashed away or interfered. They could only hope for Yang Kai to stay somewhere long enough for them to finish setting up the array. For example, the first time the Black Ink clan used the 4 Gates 8 Palaces Great Pagoda Array was in the Divine Spirit Ancestral Land. They managed to block the entire Divine Spirit Ancestral Land with it, and a pseudo-royal lord personally led numerous innate territory lords to attack and kill Yang Kai. It would have been disastrous for Yang Kai had he not taken advantage of Ancestral Land's favorable conditions, and if the pseudo-royal lord had been more measured. Without the heaven-sealing earth-locking array, there was no way to limit Yang Kai's space secret techniques, and without limiting his space secret techniques, they had no chance to kill him. While Yang Kai was chatting with Mo Nayi, some pseudo-royal lords were sneaking around in the background, which Yang Kai naturally noticed. Now, the Black Ink clan had turned the entire no-return pass into a huge trap. Compared to the previous 4 Gates 8 Palaces Great Pagoda Array, the current array was undoubtedly better hidden, and covered a wider area. Without Yang Kai noticing, the array had already been activated. Damn, Yang Kai cursed in contempt. Mo Na Yi coldly snorted. Don't you humans have a saying? If you often walk next to the river, how can your shoes not get wet? You went on 3 rampages in the no-return pass already. Do you really think that I won't learn from those failures and prepare for today? That's why you always stayed in the no-return pass, so that you could trap me here when I came again. It's unbelievable that the Black Ink clan has a talent capable of this. This kind of improvement to the array could only be done by one who had a high attainment in the Tao of Spirit arrays. The Black Ink clan had numerous Black Ink disciples, but they did not have many who were skilled in the Tao of Spirit arrays and Tao of Artifact refining. Thus, they were still vastly inferior compared to the humans. However, it had been so many years that if those array masters worked hard enough, they could achieve some gains. It's too late now. Mo Na Yi raised his hand and pointed at Yang Kai. Today you will be buried here. Yang Kai glanced around and said grimly, Aren't you afraid that the high-rank Black Ink nests in the no-return pass will be destroyed if we fight here? This was where the Black Ink clan's foundation was located. Although there were still a large number of masters, the presence of the high-rank Black Ink nests here was also a constraint for the Black Ink clan. That's why I only let 3 pseudo-royal lords come to assist me. Mo Na Yi replied indifferently. Yang Kai looked surprised for a moment before he nodded. So that's how it is. There were many pseudo-royal lords at the no-return pass, but only 3 were participating directly in the battle together with Mo Na Yi while the others remained at their posts. They were responsible for guarding the high-rank Black Ink nests in their respective areas. None of them could stand up to Yang Kai, but they were more than capable of blocking some shockwaves from hitting the nests. With them stationed here, the high-rank Black Ink nests would most likely not be affected. Of course, if necessary. Mo Na Yi said with determination. There can be more pseudo-royal lords to deal with you. Simply said, I am prepared to do whatever it takes to kill you today. From these words alone, one could see Mo Na Yi's determination to eradicate Yang Kai. There was nothing left to say as everything was in place on the Black Ink clan's side. As such, Yang Kai simply decided to follow the flow. He slightly raised his hand, summoned the Azure Dragon Spear, and clenched its shaft. As his Tao strength stirred, the space-time river began to coil around the long spear. His fighting spirit began to boil and his killing intent surged. Yang Kai held the spear, pointed it forward and proclaimed, Then let's see how many of your masters I kill before I fall. Begin. Mo Na Yi and the 3 pseudo-royal lords lunged forward simultaneously and attacked Yang Kai from opposite sides. Yang Kai immediately thrust the Azure Dragon Spear forward, sending out a spear shadow filled with Tao strength so powerful that it terrified the pseudo-royal lords. The spear sliced a pseudo-royal lord's body, drew some black blood, and continued its momentum towards Mo Na Yi's face. Mo Na Yi roared and his Black Ink strength surged, turning into a protective layer covering his body. However, that barrier was directly pierced by the long spear. At the critical moment, Mo Na Yi raised his arm and managed to deflect the spear away from his body. The tip of the spear still scratched Mo Na Yi's face and Yang Kai swiftly made a sweep with it, sending the former flying with a powerful strike. Yang Kai was about to give chase when he felt a powerful force coming at him from behind. It was the 3 pseudo-royal lords who attacked together, forcing him to draw back his spear to defend himself. Mo Na Yi quickly regained his balance but still appeared bewildered. The last time he faced Yang Kai head-on was in the Universe Furnace world when Yang Kai had just advanced to the 9th Order, and he had just become a royal lord. He was almost killed by Yang Kai back then, but Meng Ke sacrificed himself for the greater good and helped him to escape. It had been hundreds of years since that encounter. Now fighting Yang Kai once again, Mo Na Yi suddenly found that this bastard seemed to be a lot stronger than back then. Of course, Yang Kai would certainly become stronger after hundreds of years, but likewise, Mo Na Yi was also much stronger than back then. Both of them still had serious injuries back when they first fought, so neither was able to display their peak strength. However, Yang Kai had now become much stronger than Mo Na Yi had expected. He knew how humans cultivated and understood well that a 9th Order master required many years of accumulation to improve themselves. Thus he could not figure out how Yang Kai managed to grow so much in just a few hundred years. Mo Na Yi thought that one group of 3 pseudo-royal lords together with himself would be enough to deal with Yang Kai, but now it seemed that was not sufficient. Unfortunately, he was not prepared to let more pseudo-royal lords come forward to fight against Yang Kai, as just adding more bodies may not help the situation. The 3 pseudo-royal lords who were already in a battle formation could only withstand Yang Kai's assault for 10 breaths before they started to crumble under his relentless attacks. They had previously fought with other Ninth Order masters, and basically concluded that if they used a 3 fortunes formation, they would be able to contend with the enemy. Even if they were ultimately outmatched, they did not have to fear dying. However, this killing star seemed to be far more powerful than other Ninth Order masters. Fortunately, Mo Na Yi quickly came over to assist them. Even then, it was just barely enough to contend with Yang Kai. The pseudo-royal lords who were tasked with protecting the no-return pass saw this, and became concerned and gloomy. It was impossible to realize how powerful Yang Kai was until one actually fought him. 3 pseudo-royal lords in a formation could compete with a Ninth Order master. That was the standard rule. But now, even with Mo Na Yi, who was a true royal lord, their power was barely enough to hold Yang Kai back. Yang Kai was even beginning to gain the upper hand over them, which was a terrifying sight to behold. The battle was fierce and ruthless. Several figures darted around as they fought throughout the no-return pass. Every single attack on Yang Kai was well coordinated and powerful, which showed how well prepared the Black Ink clan was for this confrontation. The pseudo-royal lords who were guarding the high-rank Black Ink nests were also able to block all the fallout, leaving the Black Ink nests untouched. As the battle dragged on, the 3 pseudo-royal lords who were fighting became wounded and drained, causing their strength to drop. At that moment, 3 other pseudo-royal lords flew out from the perimeter, formed a battle formation, and joined the fight. Once that happened, the 3 exhausted and wounded pseudo-royal lords made a feint and withdrew. Yang Kai remarked in slight surprise. So this is your plan? 3 fresh pseudo-royal lords replaced the 3 who were exhausted. This tag team tactic was easy for the Black Ink clan to execute and sustain, as they had enough pseudo-royal lords to rotate into the fight. As long as the 3 pseudo-royal lord replacements joined the battle smoothly, Yang Kai would constantly be under pressure. Since you're using this tactic, why don't you summon more pseudo-royal lords and fight together? Yang Kai asked as he thrust his spear at Mo Na Yi. Mo Na Yi dodged, coldly snorted, and counterattacked. There's no need for that. The array has been activated, and the no-return pass has been isolated. You want to take me down with minimal effort? That's a good plan. Yang Kai raised his brow as he continued his rush towards Mo Na Yi. Although I have to admit that this tactic is effective, you might have forgotten that there is a major flaw to it. Mo Na Yi asked indifferently, What? Yang Kai replied, The most crucial factor of this plan is you. After all, there is no one to replace you. So what? So, Yang Kai's aura suddenly changed and became exceedingly violent. All I have to do is kill you. Martial Peak. Chapter 5879. Concealing one's ability by feigning weakness. The space-time river, which had wrapped around the Azure Dragon spear, suddenly turned into another spear which had the Tao strengths attached, and shot out towards the 3 pseudo-royal lords to block all their attacks. Simultaneously, Yang Kai thrust out his Azure Dragon spear and charged at Mo Na Yi. Mo Na Yi's expression changed as he realized that Yang Kai had not exerted his full strength, causing him to stare at his opponent in total disbelief. How could he have grown so much in just a few hundred years? However, Mo Na Yi could not afford to think about it at this moment. Yang Kai had obviously grown significantly, but he too had not idled in the last few hundred years, and had also grown stronger. Though not as much as Yang Kai, his cultivation was completely consolidated now. He was able to fight back and not just be on the receiving end of Yang Kai's killing blows. Black Ink's strength rumbled as a giant black ink cloud billowed, enveloping a huge portion of the void. The black ink cloud resonated with Mo Na Yi's roar. How long can you last like that? He could see that Yang Kai had used some kind of secret technique to boost his strength, but such secret techniques always had limitations. Yang Kai immediately snarled. Not for long, but it's enough to kill you. Come. The two taunted each other like petulant children within the black ink cloud. confusing the pseudo-royal lords at the no-return pass. Yang Kai was fighting alone while the human race army and the Black Ink clan army were engaged in a chaotic melee on the perimeter of the no-return pass. While the humans were woefully outnumbered, they seemed to have the upper hand. Moreover, Black Ink clan's tactical situation was different from that of the humans. The humans had pure Yang Pass outside the battlefield coordinating their movements. Precise orders were issued from pure Yang Pass to all parts of the battlefield, so the soldiers only needed to follow these directives and the entire human race army became like a tightly knit entity. They advanced and retreated together, providing assistance to each other whenever needed. On the other hand, Mo Na Yi and Mo Yu were both fully engaged in the fighting. Mo Na Yi had anticipated this situation before the war started, and had informed several of his subordinates to take over commanding the Black Ink clan Grand Army. However, they did not have enough experience, and their tactical and strategic thinking were lacking. They did not stand a chance against the battle-hardened veteran Mi Jingluan. If the Black Ink clan did not have the geographic advantage as the defensive side, and could not immediately receive reinforcements, they would have lost the battle already. However, the humans also had their concerns. Despite the fact that they had the advantage in essentially all aspects of this battle, the Black Ink clan still had the two Black Ink giant spirit gods which were eyeing them dangerously. These two beings were wary of Adarana Air, who were still in the barren territory, and dared not move from the no-return pass just yet. However, they could still launch attacks remotely. Even the simplest attack from a Black Ink giant spirit god was so powerful that it could not be underestimated, and many humans had already been slaughtered by them. Thus, it was unrealistic for the humans to think that they could retake the no-return pass in a single battle. Just as the Black Ink clan had a clear understanding of the situation between the two sides, so did the humans. The deciding factor of the war between the two races was the four giant spirit gods. Whoever could solve the other's giant spirit gods first would seize an irreversible advantage. However, how could either army even attempt to solve the giant spirit gods of the other side? The biggest gain so far for the human race was the Black Ink clan army feigning an attack on Pure Yang Pass, exposing their backs to the humans' reserve force. Outside Pure Yang Pass, the 12 pseudo-royal lords had led a million-strong Black Ink clan army towards the rear command post of the human race army, before suddenly turning around and heading to a weak spot in the humans' offensive. Seeing this, Mi Jingluan ordered the two newly promoted 9th Order Masters to lead 208th Order Masters to pursue them. The Black Ink clan army, which wanted to coordinate with their clansmen in the no-return pass, was suddenly set upon by these human masters. The 12 pseudo-royal lords naturally saw this situation, but instead of confronting the enemy in the open, they ordered their army to escape back to the safety of the no-return pass. Unfortunately, this resulted in half of their subordinates being slaughtered. Mi Jingluan looked at the situation on the battlefield from Pure Yang Pass and sighed. After this fight with the Black Ink clan, he realized that the enemy had more strength than he had expected. Unlike the Black Ink clan, who did not care about their casualties, every human soldier was a rare warrior. Taking the no-return pass was just the beginning. The humans still had to go to the primordial heavens source grand restriction. If too many were killed or critically wounded in retaking the no-return pass, how could they embark on the next part of the plan? So when Mi Jingluan dispatched the army for this battle, he had emphasized the principle of preserving their war potential rather than maximizing the damage to the Black Ink clan. He endeavored not to have severe losses in the army, especially among the high-ranking Open Heaven Realm Masters. At this point in the battle, the humans certainly had the absolute upper hand. However, without resolving the Black Ink giant spirit gods, there was no way to retake the no-return pass. If they continued the fight unabated, there would definitely be more casualties. In such an intensely violent battlefield, every soldier would consume a lot of strength. Additionally, the medicinal efficacies of the purifying Black Ink pills, which were taken in advance, were time-limited. With so many dead Black Ink clansmen on the battlefield, creating massive amounts of Black Ink clouds, the protective effects of the purifying Black Ink pills were being constantly eroded. Once the medicinal efficacies of the purifying Black Ink pills failed, it would be difficult to fight in an environment filled with Black Ink strength. Mi Jingluan could not help but turn his head and look at the depths of the no-return pass, where he vaguely saw several figures in the midst of a fierce battle. Upon seeing this, he frowned slightly and muttered, "Concealing one's ability by feigning weakness?" Unlike Mo Na Yi, Mi Jingluan was aware of Yang Kai's actual strength as he had discussed this with the latter recently. After 20 years of cultivating with the power of the two open heaven realm cradles, Yang Kai's strength was vastly superior to what it used to be. With Yang Kai's current strength, he should not have any problems killing Mo Na Yi, even if 3 pseudo-royal lords were assisting the latter. However, the battle seemed to be an even struggle. Clearly, Yang Kai did not use his full strength as he was intending to conceal the extent of his abilities. Mi Jingluan naturally was not worried about Yang Kai's safety. Before the battle started, Yang Kai approached Mi Jingluan and chatted with him privately, planning for various scenarios, including the current situation he was in. Mi Jingluan naturally knew why Yang Kai decided to feign weakness, even to the extent of letting Mo Na Yi live. Revealing his true strength to Mo Na Yi was not advantageous at this moment. It was far more important for the humans to deal with the 2 black ink giant spirit gods. Yang Kai decided to conceal his ability and only strike at the critical moment against the black ink giant spirit gods. After a few more moments of watching, Mi Jingluan withdrew his gaze and said to himself, "We've met our objective." The officers around him immediately focused and waited for the order to be given. The next moment, Mi Jingluan declared, "Pass down the order. All armies are to retreat and regroup at Pyongyang Pass." "Yes, sir." The messages were immediately sent to all the armies. At the same time, Pyongyang Pass, which had been outside the battlefield, also moved and pressed forward in the direction of the no-return pass, as all its artifacts came to life. Mi Jingluan then flew up and rushed towards the battlefield. As a Ninth Order master, he should have already taken to the battlefield to kill the enemy. However, he had to remain behind to direct the army's movements. Now that the battle was coming to an end, there was not much more for him to do. The human army only needed to withdraw from the battlefield in an orderly manner according to the original plan, so Mi Jingluan could finally put down the heavy burden of command and go to the battlefield to act as a lone Ninth Order master. At the same time as Pyongyang Pass began moving, on the battlefield inside the no-return pass, Yang Kai muttered, "It's about time." Pyongyang Pass heading to the battlefield was a signal for the retreat of the human race army, and Yang Kai knew it well. Although he had been fighting alone, he was still taking advantage of the momentum of the human army. At that moment, Yang Kai's extremely fierce attacks suddenly slowed down, and he held a stoic expression. Across from him, Mo Na Yi was drenched in cold sweat as he felt like he just escaped from the gates of death. He did not expect Yang Kai's explosive assault to last so long, and had almost not survived the onslaught. His body was covered with wounds now, and even though they were not life-threatening, it made him look quite disheveled. There had also already been several rounds of pseudo-royal lords who rotated in and out of the battlefield. He was secretly relieved that Yang Kai stopped his attacks at this point. Otherwise, once he was killed, the pseudo-royal lords would have to face Yang Kai on their own. Once that happened, the high-rank Black Ink nests would suffer heavy losses, which would make the entire war situation untenable. Mo Na Yi, Yang Kai said after he adjusted his breathing. "Let me show you something." Mo Na Yi kept his cool and remained silent, while he continued his attacks with the 3 pseudo-royal lords in a pincer move. "Your heaven-sealing earth-locking array." As Yang Kai spoke, the space-time river once again coiled around the azure dragon spear. He then thrust his spear into the void, causing an eruption of space principles that shattered the local space. "It's useless against me now," Yang Kai declared. With the spear's thrust and the diffusion of space principles, there was a sound of something shattering, and immediately afterwards, the space around the no-return pass began to crack in a spiderweb pattern. Martial Peak, Chapter 5880, The Opposite. The Black Ink clan had tried to use the Four Gates 8 Palaces Great Pagoda array several times to deal with Yang Kai, so naturally he was prepared for this. Even before he entered the no-return pass alone, Yang Kai considered the possibility of this grand array being set up to trap him. However, Yang Kai was not worried about such trifles now. He would have been wary of a heaven-sealing earth-locking array 700 years ago, as at that time, if the local space he was in was really isolated, he would be in a lot of trouble. Unless he killed all the Black Ink clansmen inside and broke open the array, it would be impossible for him to use instantaneous movement to escape. But he was not the same as back then. In the universe furnace, he had broken through to the Ninth Order Master, and his strength had dramatically increased after his retreat over the past 20 years. In addition, Yang Kai refined and devoured various Dao strengths in the infinite river in the universe furnace world. It was also there that he realized his own space-time river was actually the condensed manifestation of all his Dao strengths. With the power of the space-time river, Yang Kai could easily break through the heaven-sealing earth-locking array arranged by the Black Ink clan, ruining their plans. Another point was that this array was only made by some Black Ink disciples with mediocre attainments in the Tao of Spirit arrays at best. Thus, the array they produced was not too effective. If it had been the great grandmaster of the human race that devised and set up an array to use against Yang Kai, it would have been more troublesome, but the Four Gates 8 Palaces Great Pagoda array was still easy to break free from. From the start of the battle today, Yang Kai could have broken the array at any moment he chose to. What he said about, "Let's see how many of your masters can I kill before I fall," before the fighting started was simply meant to mislead Mo Na Yi. Mo Na Yi was absolutely shocked the moment the heaven-sealing earth-locking array was shattered. He did not know much about spirit arrays, so he did not expect this one, which he had such high hopes for, to not affect Yang Kai at all. As such, he and the 3 pseudo-royal lords who had teamed up with him launched a desperate attack. This seemed to be a worsening situation, and it was obviously unwise to continue after knowing that it was impossible to contain Yang Kai. However, considering that Yang Kai was also feigning weakness, there was no reason why Mo Na Yi would choose not to take advantage of him when he seemed to be suffering backlash from some kind of sacrificial secret technique. Murderous thoughts flashed through his mind, but Yang Kai suppressed his urge to kill Mo Na Yi here and now. Instead, he just summoned a bit of strength to block Mo Na Yi's blow, making it appear as if the two of them were now evenly matched. The 3 pseudo-royal lords in their formation also attacked from the side, but Yang Kai simply thrust his spear out to force them back. A single thrust was enough to block these 3. After all, Yang Kai was stronger than the other Ninth Order Masters and Royal Lords by a large margin. Even though he was busy fending off Mo Na Yi, the power of this spear could not be underestimated by the 3 pseudo-royal lords. However, as Yang Kai swung his spear, the leader of the 3 pseudo-royal lords actually raised his hand to block the blow. The moment contact was made, the pseudo-royal lord's aura changed subtly. Yang Kai could not help but be stunned for a moment and quickly cursed in his heart. Even though he had been careful enough, he did not expect to fall for Mo Na Yi's tricks in the end. He had to admit that Mo Na Yi was a cunning and highly intelligent foe. The main reason for this admiration was that Yang Kai had realized that the pseudo-royal lord, who was leading the charge towards him, was not a pseudo-royal lord. He was a true royal lord. This caught him off guard. However, Yang Kai was ready for such surprises. When he came to the no-return pass more than 20 years ago, Yang Kai realized that new royal lords would soon be born in the Black Ink clan, and over the past 20 or so years, the humans managed to gain 2 new Ninth Order Masters, so how could the Black Ink clan lag behind? It was not certain a new royal lord had risen, but there was still a good chance at least one had appeared. When Mo Na Yi answered Yang Kai's probing question previously, it was difficult for him to conclude anything. However, he still held the mindset that he would rather believe that there was at least one more. With such a mindset, Yang Kai was constantly on guard against any unknown royal lord who might be lurking and waiting for an opportunity to strike. He subconsciously felt that if a new royal lord appeared in the Black Ink clan, he would be hiding somewhere, looking for an opening to attack him. However, Mo Na Yi chose to hide the new royal lord in plain sight, among a group of pseudo-royal lords. There were not many differences in terms of the auras of a royal lord and a pseudo-royal lord. What set the two apart was that a pseudo-royal lord could not control their strength completely. As a result, a pseudo-royal lord could only exert about 70 to 80% of their full strength, despite possessing the foundation of an actual royal lord. It was like 2 identical wells of water, but the lengths of rope used to draw up water were different. Since one rope was shorter, It could not access the well's entire water supply. This was the difference between a pseudo-royal lord and a true royal lord. This meant that as long as a true royal lord simply released his own aura wildly, it was basically impossible to differentiate him from a pseudo-royal lord. Even if he was in a fight, as long as he intentionally held back part of his strength, he would not reveal any flaws. So it was only when he started to attack that Yang Kai realized that among these three pseudo-royal lords, there was a true royal lord. This was what Yang Kai did not expect. He had been distracted, monitoring the movement all around him, lest a royal lord suddenly popped out of nowhere. However, he never anticipated that a true royal lord was actually lurking right next to him this whole time. This arrangement was extremely clever and was definitely Mo Na Ye's idea. According to Mo Na Ye's instructions, 3 pseudo-royal lords would join him in suppressing Yang Kai, and so far, several batches of pseudo-royal lords had rotated in and out of this battle. After establishing a kind of routine, even if Yang Kai was that astute, he would gradually become blind to such a possibility. Of course, Yang Kai was doing something similar in trying to conceal his abilities by feigning weakness. Consciously having to hold back was actually an additional burden on him, which left him somewhat distracted. There was no point in blaming himself at this point though. The 2 royal lords were close at hand, with one of them in the midst of a violent attack. In Yang Kai's current weakened state, it was impossible to dodge the incoming blow. Many thoughts flashed through his mind as Yang Kai as he weighed between continuing with the deception or revealing his true strength, counterattacking, and taking Mo Na Ye and the new royal lord by surprise. In the end though, he restrained his murderous intent. The next moment, the new royal lord's fist found its way through Yang Kai's guard and struck his chest. This punch was so powerful that it almost caved Yang Kai's chest in, and a mouthful of fresh golden blood spurted out, turning into a thick mist of blood. Yang Kai swung his fist back to repel his new foe before sweeping at him with his spear, forcing the new royal lord to dodge out of the way. Mo Na Ye was surprised that the heaven-sealing earth-locking array was broken by Yang Kai, but his original plan still worked out, which made up for the embarrassment. While Yang Kai was fighting with Di Yaluo, he raised his hand and black ink strength broke through the void, aiming at the back of the former's head. If this blow landed, it would be disastrous for Yang Kai. Mo Na Ye appeared exuberant and eagerly awaited what was to come. However, at this critical moment, Yang Kai unexpectedly swung his azure dragon spear behind his head and blocked the fierce blow precisely. Mo Na Ye immediately realized what was happening and yelled, "Don't let him get away!" As he shouted, he used his aura to shake the void, and the nearby Black Ink Masters did the same. However, when Mo Na Ye and Di Yaluo pounced towards Yang Kai again, the latter's figure faded away. Without the heaven-sealing earth-locking array, there was no way to limit Yang Kai's instantaneous movement. Even Mo Na Ye's aura could only interfere slightly with it. As a result of the interference, Yang Kai showed up not far away and failed to completely escape from the no-return pass. At this moment, he was in a terrible state with his chest sunken considerably and his body covered in blood. His aura was so diminished that it seemed like he might die at any moment. However, Mo Na Ye knew Yang Kai very well. To a divine dragon, recovering from even such serious injuries was not an issue. The only way to ensure Yang Kai was dead was to kill him on the spot. Moreover, as soon as he saw Yang Kai's current location, which was close to the territory gate, he realized what his nemesis was planning. At this moment, Yang Kai had only 2 options to flee. One was to break through the Black Ink clan's defense line and escape towards the human race army. As long as the humans sent some masters to assist him, he could ensure his own safety. He was able to sneak into the no-return pass silently with the help of Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability, but now that so many masters from the Black Ink clan were locked onto him, he could not escape using the same tactic. As such, it was difficult for him to sneak his way out of the no-return pass. If he tried to fight his way out now though, Mo Na Ye would surely notice something was off and reassess his strength. Thus, he had only one option left, which was to escape via the territory gate which led to the barren territory. Martial Peak. Chapter 5881, Decision. Yang Kai's original intention was to use the human army to create chaos in and around the No-Return Pass, engaging as many masters from the Black Ink clan as possible, so he could find a chance to slip through the territory gate into the barren territory. That was why he snuck into the No-Return Pass alone when the opportunity presented itself. Otherwise, he could have continued to wander the battlefield and kill with impunity. Yang Kai's mere presence terrified most of the Black Ink clan, including the pseudo-royal lords. The biggest reason for doing this was it was a strategy that he had discussed with Mi Jingluan before the army began the battle. Ada and Aer remained in the barren territory. These two giant spirit gods were strong but not very smart. So it was better to have a human direct and guide them, especially during the critical moments. Yang Kai was naturally the best candidate for this role. The two giant spirit gods considered him a friend, and he was strong enough to move alone to the barren territory and remain there to guard it. Furthermore, just because Yang Kai was in the barren territory did not mean that he could not participate in the battle. He was so strong that as long as he was in the barren territory, the Black Ink clan would have to divert some energy to guard against him attacking the No-Return Pass from the territory gate. The Black Ink clan would not be as worried had it been any other Ninth Order masters remaining behind the territory gate. Yang Kai intended to escape to the barren territory all along, but he did not expect the process to be so turbulent to the point he was forced to make such a bitter choice. Mo Na Yi had also anticipated Yang Kai possibly escaping through the territory gate, but he had thought the 4 gates 8 palaces Great Pagoda array would be enough to stop the latter. Previously, Mo Na Yi had quite some confidence in the heaven-sealing earth-locking array, but to his disappointment, he now realized that this array could no longer trap Yang Kai. So the moment Yang Kai reappeared, Mo Na Yi and Di Luo led a large group of pseudo-royal lords over. Before they even arrived, powerful secret techniques were sent out like a storm towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai's face paled. Throughout this battle he had been concealing his ability by feigning weakness. However, he was now really wounded and facing a deadly threat. The pseudo-royal lords who were responsible for guarding the No-Return Pass were all mobilized. In total, there were now nearly 30 top masters attacking Yang Kai, 2 of whom were true royal lords. With adversaries of such strength and numbers, even he could not resist them head-on. In his haste, Yang Kai could only hastily summon his space-time river and dive inside to shield himself as he fled towards the territory gate. Hong long long. Explosions rang out as waves surged, causing the space-time river to tumble and the Tao strengths to shake. Space rippled and cracked near the territory gate as Yang Kai disappeared while those chasing after him came to a halt. Mo Na Yi, the leader of the group, ground his teeth and snarled. He's still alive after all that. Although he had not been able to catch Yang Kai off guard, and even landed a heavy final blow, he was absolutely certain that Yang Kai was still alive. He also knew that Yang Kai had already escaped into the barren territory through the territory gate to join up with the 2 giant spirit gods. As he spoke, a strong sense of frustration rose in his heart. According to his plans, as long as nothing untoward happened, Yang Kai had less than a 30% chance of escaping from the No-Return Pass. However, the most critical 4 gates 8 palaces Great Pagoda array did not work as it should. Now not only was his plan a failure, he had shown his trump card. Di Luo's identity had been exposed, and the Black Ink clan had no more royal lords. Thus, it would now be all but impossible to kill Yang Kai. Thinking back on all the years he had been fighting with Yang Kai, Mo Na Yi realized he previously had 2 good chances to kill this plague, but always failed at the last moment. No one could be sure if he was unlucky, or if Yang Kai's fortune was just that much better to always allow him to survive. Di Luo comforted. Don't blame yourself. Although we couldn't kill him this time, he is definitely severely injured, and won't be able to cause any troubles anytime soon. Additionally, now is not the time to think about him. We should consider the overall situation. As a royal lord, Di Luo did not have many dealings with Yang Kai. More specifically, he had not suffered many losses at his hands. Thus he did not have Mo Na Yi's obsession with killing Yang Kai. However, right now, the Black Ink clan had more problems than just a wounded but still alive Yang Kai. Mo Na Yi forced himself to calm down, nodded, and said, "You're right. When he was fighting with Yang Kai, he did not have the time or the capacity to think of the situation on the battlefield. However, he immediately noticed something unusual as he observed the fights. The human race army was withdrawing, while pure Yang Pass, which had kept its distance all this time, was actually advancing. It seemed to be using the power of its various arrays and artifacts to provide cover for the retreating humans. This was a planned withdrawal which was executed in an orderly and disciplined fashion. A moment later, Mo Nayi understood why the humans chose to withdraw their forces despite having the advantage. It was true that the humans had controlled the flow of the battle this entire time, and gained many advantages thus far, resulting in a lot of casualties among the Black Ink clan, including numerous pseudo-royal lords. However, the human warships also sustained a lot of damage, and many of their masters had fallen. If the humans continued to fight, their casualties would only rise as more and more of their warships were destroyed. By choosing to withdraw at this point, they could preserve their own strength. Mo Nayi would also make this choice if he was in such a situation. To put it bluntly, the Black Ink clan was now a caged beast, and there was no need for the humans to fight them to the death. As long as there were a few more battles like this one, when Black Ink clan's strength was worn down enough, the humans could launch a decisive final attack and wipe them out. Want to leave? It's not that easy. Mo Nayi coldly snorted as he saw through the human race's intention. This kind of hit-and-run tactic was despicable and clearly Mi Jingluan's plot, so he swiftly shouted, "Pass down the order, attack the humans at all costs. Have all the pseudo-royal lords in the no-return pass join the offensive." The pseudo-royal lords were shocked by Mo Nayi's boldness. The no-return pass was the foundation of the Black Ink clan, as all the high-ranked Black Ink nests were here. The pseudo-royal lords who stayed behind were tasked exclusively with guarding these Black Ink nests. If they left, the entire no-return pass would be unguarded and extremely vulnerable. If at this moment any human race master managed to sneak through, it would definitely cause terrible damage to the Black Ink clan. However, the only one who could really achieve this was already badly injured, and had escaped into the barren territory. Thus, he would not have the strength to cause trouble again. As for the others, there was no need to worry about them accomplishing what that anomaly could do. Although this order seemed to be a rash decision by Mo Nayi, it was actually well considered. After giving this order, Mo Nayi and Dia Luo took the lead and rushed towards the battlefield, followed by several dozen pseudo-royal lords. Somewhere on the battlefield, Mi Jingluan, who had just started killing the enemies, keenly noticed this and sighed. That guy is really difficult to deal with. When an army was withdrawing from the battlefield, it was most fearful of such a situation. Now the humans were bound to incur even more losses. Thankfully, the advantage that the humans had gained this time was significant. Even though the Black Ink clan had responded in the worst way possible, the humans were still able to withstand the onslaught. Just as the battle was about to end, the fight suddenly became more intense than before. The orderly withdrawal of the human race army was interrupted by the Black Ink clan army doggedly chasing after them, with masters of both sides clashing in the void. Comparing the two sides, the humans were undoubtedly better organized. The 12 armies coordinated with each other as single units, while Black Ink clan was much more chaotically and haphazardly arranged. Many of the Black Ink clan soldiers that gave chase could not interfere with the humans meaningfully as they did not coordinate properly, and were basically trampling over each other, trying to get ahead. However, there was still some impact on the withdrawal of the army. The sudden attacks resulted in numerous losses among the humans. Many damaged warships were destroyed, and the cultivators on board were crushed. Seeing the situation deteriorating, one of the purifying Black Ink battleships actually turned around and dove into a close-quarters battle, its weapons firing madly as it plowed its way through the enemy lines. Arriving at the heart of the enemy's charge, the giant warship suddenly glowed brilliantly before exploding into a great sun made of pure white light, illuminating the entire void. The great sun enveloped a massive area and wounded or killed all the surrounding Black Ink clansmen, creating an opening for the rest of the human forces to escape. The scene was magnificent, and the battle-weary soldiers cheered from all corners of the battlefield. This was how far the humans were willing to go. How far they could go when they had something to protect. The 3,000 Worlds was their home, and although it was now an empty shell due to the Black Ink clan's wanton plunder, it was still their homeland and none of it would be ceded. If they wanted to protect their home, they had to uproot the Black Ink clan once and for all. The two mighty armies continued to clash, with the humans fighting hard as they retreated. The Black Ink clan continued their pursuit for 5 million kilometers before finally stopping. The relentless and tenacious pursuit of the humans frustrated Mi Jingluan, and he was tempted to order an immediate counteroffensive. However, considering that most of the warships were damaged and the effects of the purifying Black Ink pills was wearing out, he had no choice but to give up on this risky idea. The soldiers were very reliant on their warships for protection. For so many years, the human warships were the key to them taking on the numerically superior enemy and prevailing. Most of the losses in the later part of the battle were due to the destroyed warships, leaving the soldiers without extra protection. It was only when the pursuing Black Ink clan army retreated like an outgoing tide that this battle finally ended. Martial Peak, Chapter 5882, The Simple Giant Spirit Gods. The human race army regrouped at their temporary camp 3 days away from the No-Return Pass. After this battle, the humans would be unable to launch another full assault on the No-Return Pass within a short time. The wounded soldiers needed time to heal, not to mention that the logistics were also unable to keep up with the intense consumption. A large number of damaged warships needed to be repaired, evil purging divine spears needed to be replenished, and the purifying Black Ink pills had to be refined. All of this required a lot of resources, so although there were currently 3 million Third Order and below cultivators mining supplies in the vast Black Ink battlefield, it would always take some time to accumulate enough. A conservative estimate was that for the next 2 to 3 years, they would not have the ability to attack the No-Return Pass again. The Black Ink clan, even though they had found out that the humans had set up camp just days away, did not dare to harbor any aggressive thoughts. When the entire human race army withdrew, the Black Ink clan could still chase after them in order to thin their numbers. However, now that they had settled down and regrouped, it was not wise to disturb them again. Thus, although the humans were not far from the No-Return Pass, the two sides coexisted for a long period without much conflict. 1 month after the battle, at a certain place in the barren territory, Ada and Aer sat facing each other, looking down helplessly at the space in front of them. In their field of vision, a figure covered in blood was sleeping quietly. The blood had already congealed and stained the clothes. The figure slept on his side, suspended in the void as if there was an invisible bed underneath. Such a figure was small as an ant when compared with the towering giant spirit gods. This figure was none other than Yang Kai, who entered this place from the No-Return Pass. At the last moment, he used the power of his space-time river to block the fierce attacks of the 2 royal lords and dozens of pseudo-royal lords. The impacts were so violent that his own Dao strengths were severely impacted, and his vitality plunged to the point he became delirious. He passed out soon after entering the barren territory. He would not have been able to sleep so peacefully for so long if not for Ada and Aer watching over him. With their protection, Yang Kai felt safe enough to recuperate in peace. However, his condition caused the 2 giant spirit gods to worry about him. After staring at the tiny figure in front of him for a long time, Ada suddenly wailed, "Dead!" Ada had said this so many times that Aer was so frustrated, but he still patiently explained, "Not dead. Asleep." Ada suddenly remarked, "Oh, ate till he was full." He had always maintained a routine of napping when he was full and looking for food when he woke up. Therefore, he expected that all the living creatures should be the same as him. Since Yang Kai was asleep, he must have eaten enough and was now taking a nap. When this topic was brought up, Ada reached out, rubbed his belly and grumbled, "I'm hungry." Aer also instinctively echoed, "N." The 2 giant spirit gods looked at each other gloomily. At that moment, the sleeping Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and sat up slowly. He appeared dazed, drowsy, and stiff for a while before yawning. He stretched his back and mumbled, "That was a good nap." It had been ages since he was able to sleep so comfortably. Since his strength became so much stronger, he almost did not need to sleep normally to recover his energy. Now he took advantage of his wounds and the protection of the giant spirit gods to sleep peacefully and allow his body to heal. Waking up, he immediately felt mighty as a dragon and fierce as a tiger. His revitalized energy coursed through his veins and he could not wait to barge into the no-return pass and beat those two bastards to a pulp. But then a huge face suddenly filled his entire vision and thundered. "Are you hungry?" The void shook under the thunderous but clearly concerned voice. Yang Kai was nearly blown away by the force of the wind that resulted from the giant spirit god's breath, but he quickly stabilized himself, looked up at the humongous bald head, and knew immediately that it was Ada. Yang Kai chuckled, raised his hand, and waved his hand. "You're talking about yourself, right? Okay, I know. Back up a little bit, I haven't forgotten what I promised you the last time." When he left the barren territory some 20 years ago, he instructed Ada and Aer to guard the territory gate, and smash anyone who dared to cross the territory gate. He promised them that if they did that, he would bring them food the next time he came. The two giant spirit gods had done a good job over the years, and it was because of their deterrence that the Black Ink giant spirit gods of the Black Ink clan did not dare to join in the battle a month ago. Yang Kai naturally had to fulfill his promise to them. Yang Kai raised his hand and flipped it over, and an orb appeared on his palm. He said childishly, "Look at this. Do you know what it is?" Ada and Aer's eyes were immediately attracted by the orb. They could smell the delicious fragrance that emanated from the orb, and knew that this was their food. However, what puzzled them was that this food was not quite the same as what they would eat previously. So even though their stomachs were rumbling, they resisted the urge to feast. Yang Kai laughed at the look of the two giant spirit gods before throwing out the world bead from his hand without further delay. The little world bead flew into the void, and as it fell, space principles flared, allowing the tiny sphere to rapidly expand. Just a few moments later, it became a complete universe world. The volume of this universe world was just as big as the star boundary. However, its surface was full of large pits and there were a number of dark tunnels leading to its interior. These were obviously traces left behind by the mining of resources. The valuable resources had all been extracted from this universe world. And since world principles was collapsed, it was considered as a dead universe world, which suited giant spirit god's appetite. Now that the 3,000 worlds had basically been hollowed out, it was not easy to find such a universe world. However, since Yang Kai promised Ada and Aer to bring them good food, he had to keep to his word. Fortunately, in the 3,000 worlds, there was still Myriad Monsters territory, which was the great territory adjacent to High Heaven territory. Myriad Monsters territory and High Heaven territory had become the last two pure lands of the human race. Yang Kai found this universe world in Myriad Monsters territory, refined it into a world bead, and brought it to this place before restoring it to its original size using his space secret techniques. Such tasks were easily done by Yang Kai nowadays. After seeing the delicious universe world, the two giant spirit gods immediately jumped up and down in joy and ran over to it. The giant spirit gods' bodies were massive, even when compared to such a universe world. So they each sat on opposite ends and began reaching out to grab large chunks of it, and shoving them into their mouths before crunching it with their massive teeth. This was the first time Yang Kai watched the giant spirit gods eating in such close proximity, and even though he had seen many things in his life, this was still an amazing sight to behold. It had been very puzzling to him that the giant spirit gods only eat this kind of dead universe world. How could such a huge body with terrifying strength be nourished by this? The universe was indeed filled with profound mysteries that were difficult to understand. The two giant spirit gods were eating with one hand and grabbing with the other, both smiling happily at Yang Kai. When Ada realized that Yang Kai was staring at them, he handed over a universe fragment and said, "Friend, let's all eat together." Yang Kai froze for a moment, then realized what he meant by friend. Ada had always called him Little One or even Little Ant, but since he had brought them such good food, he now became their friend. Since Ada offered so generously, Yang Kai took the universe fragment into his small universe, fearing that it would upset him if he refused. Ada saw this and smiled from ear to ear. It was a pity that there were so few giant spirit gods now. If there were more than 2, perhaps 8 or 10, they could have easily retaken the no-return pass. All Yong-kai would need to do is lead a squad of them to get the job done. Casting such fanciful thoughts aside, Yong-kai turned his head and looked at the territory gate. Through the void turbulence, Yong-kai could still vaguely see the situation in the no-return pass. After the last battle, the no-return pass was obviously more closely guarded, especially the area around the territory gate. A powerful figure stood openly, clearly telling Yong-kai that if he dared to venture across, he would be immediately beaten. Yong-kai coldly snorted, took off his blood-stained clothes, summoned some water from his small universe, and washed himself. He then changed into a new set of robes. Although he had been in a deep sleep, he was extremely sensitive to the passage of time, and knew clearly that it was only 1 month since the last battle. He estimated that the Black Ink clan lost at least 20 pseudo-royal lords with even more seriously wounded. It was very troublesome for such masters to heal, so it would be a long time before they could fully recover. However, the humans also needed to recuperate and accumulate supplies for the next battle. Everything took time. Therefore, although Yong-kai could not get in touch with Mi Jingluan, according to what they had planned, the next attack on the no-return pass would be at least 2 years later. 2 years was neither long nor short. It was just enough time for Yong-kai to deal with some things. He had an idea in mind, and it was time to act. Martial Peak, Chapter 5883, Out of Control Small Stone Race. Yong-kai was slightly taken aback, looking at Ada and Aer. The universe world had been completely devoured by the 2 giant spiritual gods in just a short time. When they noticed Yong-kai looking at them, they immediately looked at him eagerly. Obviously, the 2 had not had their fill yet. Yong-kai immediately stated, "Wait here, I'll go find you something to eat now. Just like before, keep a close eye on this place. If anyone dares to come out from the other side of the door, beat them to death." The 2 giant spiritual gods nodded their acknowledgement. Yong-kai had used his actions to prove that he wasn't someone who goes back on his word. Compared to the promise he made last time, this time, Ada and Aer naturally looked forward to it with great expectations. After confirming that the 2 giant spiritual gods understood his intentions, Yong-kai manipulated space principles and rushed towards the territory gate connected to the shattered heaven. A moment later, he arrived at the territory gate and entered. The injuries Yong-kai had sustained in the battle a month ago weren't light, but they weren't too serious either. After a month of sleep, his physical body had basically fully recovered. The instability in his Dao strengths wasn't something that could be so easily resolved, but as long as he didn't overexert his Dao strength, it wouldn't affect him much. The current human race could be said to have mobilized all of their forces to war. Disregarding the many great territories that had already become empty shells, even High Heaven territory and Myriad Monsters territory only had a few old, weak, and disabled people left behind, as well as some rising stars who had yet to fully mature. They had been born too late, so no matter how outstanding their aptitude was, they had yet to reach the open heaven realm. As such, they weren't even qualified to join the logistics team to gather resources. Under such circumstances, Yong-kai's goal for returning to the 3,000 worlds from the shattered heaven was naturally not High Heaven territory or Myriad Monsters territory. His destination was elsewhere. Traversing through many great territories at his leisure, Yong-kai finally arrived at his destination after nearly 3 months. Chaotic Dead territory. In fact, when the upper echelons of the human race decided to attack the no-return pass, Yong-kai had wanted to make a trip to Chaotic Dead territory first. In the past, he had brought Zhang Ruoxi here to cultivate with Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan. So many years had already gone by. Even he had no idea what the results would be. Because of her Heaven's Order bloodline, Zhang Ruoxi was not affected by the Open Heaven Realm method's shackles. Even though she had initially broken through to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm, she still had a chance of reaching the 9th Order all on her own. As proof, she had smoothly made it to the 8th Order many years ago. Of course, the amount of time that passed shouldn't have been enough for her to reach the 9th Order. Be that as it may, what Yong-kai valued was not her cultivation, but her amazing ability to control the small stone race. Zhang Ruoxi was able to fully control them. Those from this race had intelligence that was even inferior to the giant spiritual gods. It was horribly low, so low that they only acted based on their instincts. Basically, no one could completely control them. However, the small stone race raised by Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan had become a special variation. These small stone race members were divided into two types, the Great Sun Small Stone Race and the Great Moon Small Stone Race. Because they had grown up absorbing the pure power of Yang and Yin, respectively, they could almost be regarded as living, mobile yellow and blue crystals. All the divine spirits with the Great Sun and Great Moon marks were capable of controlling these small stone race members that had been reared using this special method. At critical moments, they could even extract the Yin and Yang energy from their bodies and fuse them into purifying light. Yang Kai had used this method many times to kill masters from the Black Ink clan. Compared to Yang Kai and the other divine spirits who used the Great Sun and Great Moon marks to control them though, Zhang Ruoxi completely relied on the suppression of her bloodline to do the same, and was actually able to exert a vastly superior level of control akin to moving her arms and legs. She had no need for the Great Sun and Great Moon marks. She was even able to have small stone race members form higher order 9 palaces formations. Yang Kai had witnessed her do this up until a 4th order 9 palaces formation, comprised of over 6,000 small stone race soldiers. Even for the human race, forming a 9 palaces formation was not an easy task, especially at higher orders. Hardly anyone could even form the 8 trigrams formation, while no one had ever witnessed a 9 palaces formation of 8th order masters. However, in previous battles, 8 8th order masters had successfully formed the 8 trigrams formation and used it to kill pseudo-royal lords. Of course, during such battles, it was inevitable that some if not all of the 8th order masters involved would die from the backlash of using such a battle formation, while those who managed to survive had their foundations severely damaged. Even so, given that it had such might, all 8th order masters wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice their lives so long as they could kill a pseudo-royal lord from the Black Ink clan. Unfortunately, successfully forming this battle formation was not always possible, even if the masters attempting it were willing to make such a sacrifice. If an 8 trigrams formation formed by 8th order masters could kill a pseudo-royal lord, then what about the 9 palaces formation? It was probably strong enough to kill a royal lord. Unfortunately, no 8th order masters could achieve this. By comparison, Zhang Ruoxi's ability was simply shocking. It could be said that even if she was only an 8th order master, the role she could play on the battlefield would not be inferior to any 9th order master. Unfortunately, Yang Kai was unable to find any free time after returning from the edge of the universe, so he was unable to visit chaotic dead territory until now. Yang Kai was quite looking forward to Zhang Ruoxi's growth. If everything went smoothly, he was prepared to take her to the battlefield where she could finally show her marvelous ability. This way, it would be easier for the human race to retake the no-return pass, and they would suffer lesser casualties. On top of that, he also wanted to ask Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan for some more yellow and blue crystals. The human race's current supplies were severely depleted, but the pure Yin and Yang element materials were indispensable to the war effort. After passing through the territory gate, Yang Kai stepped into chaotic dead territory after a very long time, but the next moment, he was slightly taken aback. The sight before him was different from the last time he had come to chaotic dead territory. This time, the very first thing he saw was 2 armies of innumerable small stone race members locked in a heated confrontation in the void. Looking around, Yang Kai saw that the size of these 2 small stone race armies was not small, each totaling at least 1 million members. What surprised Yang Kai wasn't their numbers though. The small stone race was found in a remote universe world in Myriad Monsters territory. Their living habits were quite similar to that of ants, with an ant queen-like existence in each colony. As long as they had enough resources, they could constantly reproduce. So in terms of numbers, each small stone race colony could easily reach an astonishing size. Yang Kai was also rearing a large number of small stone race members in his small universe, but he always prevented the reproduction of these small stone race from getting out of control. Otherwise, the entire void world would become a small stone race world in no time. At that point, there would be no place for the human race to stand. Strictly speaking, the conflict between 2 million strong armies was just a small-scale battle for the small stone race. What surprised Yang Kai was the fact that these two sides were fighting each other at all. It was true that when Yang Kai handed over the small stone race to Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan, it was to allow them to use this method to determine who was the elder sibling. It could be said that the reason for the Great Sun Small Stone Race and the Great Moon Small Stone Race's existence was to fight each other. But that was only the initial situation. Since the Black Ink clan had invaded the 3,000 worlds, the two supreme masters of chaotic dead territory had stopped playing such silly games and instead focused on raising more small stone race soldiers to give their little brother, Yang Kai, to assist in the war. Yang Kai had looted yellow crystals, blue crystals, and even the small stone race armies from them several times. Although these two complained a lot about his open banditry, they had never let Yang Kai return empty-handed. Every time Yang Kai came to ask for their help, he would always reap a bountiful harvest. The relationship between Yang Kai and the two of them was similar to that of a prodigal son who indulges in debauchery and parents who painstakingly accumulates their family's wealth. Every time they built up a little savings, Yang Kai would come over and take it away before squandering it all. But they were willing to do so because they also didn't want to see the Black Ink clan rule the universe. Despite their astonishing strength and ability, they were unable to provide direct assistance in this war between the human race and Black Ink clan, where one side was destined to be completely annihilated. The small stone race was the only thing they could offer in terms of combat power. Thus, the small stone races in chaotic dead territory had stopped fighting each other a long time ago. The last two times Yang Kai had come here, he had not seen any scenes of conflict, so the scene in front of him was quite shocking. There weren't any powerful masters among the two small stone race armies, but the battlefield was extremely fierce. Yin and Yang were opposites to begin with, and once the small stone race, which naturally fought amongst themselves, was bestowed with the Yin and Yang elements, this kind of opposition became particularly prominent. On the battlefield, the two branches of the small stone race clashed with each other, fighting without any semblance of order. One by one, small stone race members were blown to smithereens. Although no blood was spilled and all the battles were fought on instinct, the intensity of the war was not inferior to any Yang Kai had witnessed before. Yang Kai quietly observed for a moment before restraining his impulse to intervene. Relying on the great sun and great moon marks bestowed by burning light and serene glimmer, Yang Kai could easily separate these two small stone race armies, but because he didn't know what Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan's intentions were, he decided to let things be for now. If these two supreme beings of the chaotic dead territory had some kind of special purpose for this battle, Yang Kai's interference might disrupt their plans. Bypassing these two warring armies, Yang Kai flew deeper into chaotic dead territory. After an hour, Yang Kai's expression became solemn. Along the way, he saw many battlefields of varying size, each of which had a large number of small stone race soldiers locked in combat. The first battlefield he encountered wasn't very large, and there weren't many powerful members, but on the largest battlefield, he actually witnessed close to 10 million small stone race soldiers fighting with each other, with many colossal members that were equivalent to the 7th Order and 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. This made Yang Kai immediately realize that something had gone wrong. Martial Peak, Chapter 5884, Yin-Yang Rebellion. The entire chaotic dead territory seemed to have been drawn into the battle between two small stone races. Every once in a while, Yang Kai would run into a battle either in progress or already over. Something is obviously wrong. Even when Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan were keen on using the small stone race to determine who was the elder sibling, they had never expanded the scale of the battle to this extent. This kind of scale could no longer be called a game, but a true war. The number participating in this conflict was no less than the combined total of the human race and Black Ink clan. What's more, it had only been about 1,000 years since he last came here, so how could there be so many of them in the chaotic dead territory? Of course, theoretically speaking, It wouldn't be surprising for the small stone race to reach this population in 1,000 years with their outstanding reproductive ability as long as there were no restrictions, and there were ample resources. Except, this was Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan's territory. They did not have any need to let the small stone race reproduce to this number. Most of these small stone race members were subpar. Their physique was extremely weak, making them even weaker than the Black Ink clan cannon fodder, whose only role was to send themselves to their deaths to spread Black Ink strength. In terms of a contest, it was better to nurture more small stone race masters rather than spend energy to produce many insignificant small stone race soldiers. The scene here gave Yang Kai a sense of chaos, as if a massive number of small stone race members had lost control, turning chaotic dead territory's name into a reality. When this thought appeared, Yang Kai couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Logically speaking, the small stone race shouldn't have gone out of control with Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan here, but everything he had seen indicated otherwise. As he continued heading deeper into chaotic dead territory, he saw more and more small stone race members fighting each other. At one point, Yang Kai suddenly stopped and stared ahead with a look of surprise. Having reached his current cultivation, there weren't many things that could surprise him. Even if he were to face the Black Ink giant spirit god right now, he would still remain perfectly calm, but the sight before him gave him a strange feeling. He felt as if something had erupted in the depths of the void. 3 breaths later, a dazzling spot of light appeared in Yang Kai's field of vision. This point of light was undoubtedly far away, but because it was so bright, Yang Kai could see it clearly even from where he stood. When it first appeared, this speck of light was only the size of a needle tip, but it spread out at an indescribable speed. At the same time, extremely powerful energy fluctuations came with it. Yang Kai could faintly hear a clear bird cry like that of a phoenix. The sounds of birds' cries became clearer and clearer, and multiplied every moment. Soon the dazzling light filled Yang Kai's vision. When the light dissipated, what Yang Kai saw and heard left him dumbfounded. Much to his surprise, countless strange existences of varying sizes had appeared in the void, resembling Phoenix, but a little different from those from the Phoenix clan. Yang Kai immediately recognized these strange existences. He had seen these things the first time he came to chaotic dead territory with Ada. They weren't living creatures, but rather masses of pure Yin and Yang energies, the manifestation of the burning light and serene glimmer's power. The orange-yellow creatures were the manifestation of energy leaking from burning light, while the blue-colored ones were the serene glimmer's power. Yin and Yang were inherently opposites. When Yang Kai first came to the chaotic dead territory, these unique existences of different colors were fighting against each other just like the small stone race. The confrontation of these two pure opposing energies gave birth to large amounts of yellow and blue crystals, which allowed Yang Kai to reap great benefits. According to Burning Light and Serene Glimmer, they could not properly control their own strength once it was unleashed. So from the day they were born, their powers had been constantly clashing with each other. And this was what Yang Kai was seeing right now. It was also because of this that the two supreme masters of the chaotic dead territory were unable to leave this place and help the human race. Once they left the chaotic dead territory and entered another great territory, that great territory would become a part of the chaotic dead territory. Back then, Yang Kai had thought that if one day the human race really couldn't hold on any longer, he would ask Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan to descend the mountain and wreak havoc. No matter how much these two destroyed, it would still be better than allowing the Black Ink clan to corrupt everything. Of course, the situation had not yet reached such a critical level. As existences whose strength wasn't inferior to that of a giant spirit god, it was quite strange that these two couldn't control their own strength. It wasn't until Yang Kai visited the divine spirit ancestral land and witnessed its complete history that this mystery was finally solved. It turned out the Burning Light and Serene Glimmer were incomplete existences. They had been separated from the primordial light, so although they had great strength, they were unable to perfectly control it as they were lacking certain pieces of their foundation. Even the Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan who Yang Kai interacted with were not their true forms, just avatars composed of their energy. From another point of view, They could be considered as manifestations of energy that they could control. So when Yang Kai came into contact with them, there was no danger. Zhang Ruoxi's Heaven's Order bloodline was also incomplete. After the primordial light separated Yin and Yang from itself, it arrived at the divine spirit ancestral land where it dispersed itself and gave rise to many divine spirits. The final pure essence of the primordial light was what eventually became the Heaven's Order bloodline. This was also the reason why the Heaven's Order bloodline was able to restrain all divine spirits, and even allow Zhang Ruoxi to easily control the small stone race. Yang Kai had noticed this point, which was why he had brought Zhang Ruoxi to the chaotic dead territory to meet Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan to cultivate. However, the clash between the Yin and Yang energies of the burning light and serene glimmer had reappeared for some unknown reason now. If nothing unexpected happened, these manifestations that looked like phoenixes were destined to battle each other to the death before transforming into yellow and blue crystals. However, the existence of the small stone race interfered with this end result. Yang Kai clearly saw that on a nearby battlefield, two small stone race armies happened to be engaged in a fierce battle, but the moment the Yin and Yang energies manifested, they all abandoned their respective opponents and pounced towards the Yin and Yang creatures. The small stone race had been raised by Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan using their own strength, so the Yin and Yang energies naturally had a fatal attraction to them. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary small stone race clansman was very small, only reaching an adult human's thigh in height, but they seemed to grow bigger and bigger as their strength increased. Be that as it may, they were still no bigger than ordinary humans before Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan began feeding them with their pure Yin and Yang energies. In the blink of an eye, the countless manifestations of Yin and Yang energies were surrounded by the small stone race, and even more small stone race members continued rushing over from afar to devour them. This scene resembled a swarm of ants covering a sweet and delicious meat bun. This was just the scenes Yang Kai could see, but considering how massive the pulse of light from before was, similar scenes must be happening all over the chaotic dead territory, out of Yang Kai's sight. Although the manifestations of Yin and Yang energies were essentially pieces of the burning light and serene glimmer, and took the form of various monster beasts and creatures, they were not alive. As such, even though they were being devoured by countless small stone race members, they didn't utter a single wail or even struggle to break free, because the small stone race members that were devouring them were just like them in terms of Yin and Yang attributes. The Great Sun small stone race devoured the Yang energy creatures, while the Great Moon small stone race devoured those made of Yin energy. Yang Kai clearly saw a small stone race member in a certain location, who was originally equivalent to a peak 7th Order master, suddenly started radiating a yellow halo after devouring a large amount of Yang energy. Immediately after, its body, which was already larger than the other small stone race members, began growing rapidly as its aura reached something equivalent to an 8th Order master. All the small stone race members who were ingesting Yin and Yang energies saw varying degrees of improvement. Yang Kai finally understood how this chaotic dead territory had so many small stone race members now. To the small stone race, the energy dispersing from burning light and serene glimmer was a great blessing. With such a massive amount of energy to use as food, the small stone race's reproduction was naturally smooth, and after many years of accumulation, it wasn't surprising for them to have reached such a massive number. The source of all this seemed to be deep in the distant void. Yang Kai turned his head to look in the direction where the explosion of light originated from. If he wasn't mistaken, the burning light and serene glimmer were there, because their energy was dispersing from that direction. What happened in the chaotic dead territory over the past 1,000 years? What are Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan up to? What about Ruoxi? Suppressing the many doubts in his heart, Yang Kai took a step forward and manipulated space principles, dashing off towards the distant void to investigate. With a clear goal in mind, Yang Kai sped up and arrived at his destination after an incense stick worth of time. When he saw what was happening from afar, a furrow appeared on Yang Kai's brow. To his confusion, a giant oval-shaped object that looked like a condensed mist was occupying a vast amount of space. At first glance, it gave the impression of an egg. Through the thick fog, Yang Kai vaguely saw a familiar figure. It was none other than Zhang Ruoxi, whom he had sent to this place many years ago. At this moment, Zhang Ruoxi seemed to be sleeping in this egg, her small figure curled up into a ball. The fog made it impossible for Yang Kai to see her expression, but judging by her sleeping posture, it seemed like she was resting peacefully. What is this? Yang Kai frowned. Zhang Ruoxi was here, but what about Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan? Looking around carefully, Yang Kai's heart suddenly jumped. The mist that had condensed into the shape of an egg was obviously filled with extremely rich and terrifying yin and yang energies. Also, two other blurry figures could be vaguely seen drifting through the mist. The yin and yang energies that were basically poles apart actually seemed to be merging together in this strange place. Yang Kai's brow slightly rose as he faintly understood what was going on, but this only made him happier rather than shocked. If he was right about what was happening, then the benefits Zhang Ruoxi would obtain this time would not be small. The burning light and serene glimmer were in complete existence, while Zhang Ruoxi's Heaven's Order bloodline was also incomplete, but her bloodline was the primary component of the primordial light which, in theory, should allow the opposing pure yin and yang energies to achieve a balance. Thinking of this, the strange scene in front of him could be explained. Just as Yang Kai was about to get closer to investigate, a sudden change occurred. A figure suddenly rushed out from the fog and charged straight at Yang Kai. Marshall Peak, Chapter 5885. Strange Small Stone Race Member. Because he was worried about Big Brother Huang, Big Sister Lan, and Zhang Ruoxi, Yang Kai's complete attention was on the strange egg-shaped object after arriving here, so he had failed to notice anything else out of the ordinary. Moreover, he really hadn't expected to be ambushed in this place. More importantly, the ambusher's aura was exactly the same as the mist, making it the perfect camouflage. It wasn't until the other party was charging at him that Yang Kai finally noticed. The ambusher was extremely fast, and was already before him by the time he blinked. When Yang Kai finally caught sight of the figure, he couldn't help but look surprised. The one rushing at him was none other than a small stone race member, who was slightly larger than an ordinary human. At first glance, it gave the impression of someone wearing a set of stone armor. This is... Along the way, Yang Kai had seen hundreds of millions of small stone race members, but none of them had paid him any attention. However, after coming here, this one suddenly attacked him. Yang Kai had no idea how he had offended it. The other party's attack was quite simple. After all, this was a race with low sentience. All it did was charge over and throw a punch at Yang Kai once it arrived in front of him. Yang Kai casually raised his hand to block. The strength of the small stone race was directly related to their size. The bigger they were, the stronger their strength. The small stone race members that were as strong as 8th Order Master were all 1,000 meters tall, and could only be considered giants. Under normal circumstances, such a small stone race member that was just slightly larger than the human could not be any stronger than the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Master. Yang Kai could easily block an attack from such a being with his current cultivation. However, Yang Kai realized how horribly wrong he was the next moment. Much to his astonishment, this punch actually made him stagger back, and the palm he used to block it was actually tingling slightly. If Yang Kai hadn't noticed that something was wrong at the moment of contact and hurriedly increased his strength, this single punch would have sent him flying. Before he could figure out what was going on, the small stone race member threw another punch at him at incredible speed. What the hell? Yang Kai was truly shocked and swiftly blocked the attack before fighting back. The shock in Yang Kai's heart was indescribable. This strange small stone race member before him was completely different from those he knew. Just from the strength and speed of its punches, this small stone race member was not inferior to an ordinary 9th Order Master. Is this guy really from the small stone race? Although Yang Kai didn't know why this small stone race member in front of him had undergone such a strange mutation, he was certain it was absolutely not an ordinary one. All this time, the strongest small stone race members cultivated by Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan were only equivalent to 8th Order Masters. In the past, Yang Kai had thought that if Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan could cultivate small stone race members equivalent to 9th Order Masters, it would be a great help to the human race. However, this was just a fantasy. It was already Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan's limit to cultivate small stone race soldiers to the level of an 8th Order Master. Wishing to cultivate one that was equal to a 9th Order Master was simply a fool's dream. In the past, Yang Kai had asked them about this matter, and the answer he received was that all of the small stone race members were nurtured by either pure Yang or Yin energy. The Great Sun small stone race was created by Big Brother Huang, while the Great Moon small stone race was created by Big Sister Lan. As Yang Kai was intimately aware now, solitary Yin or Yang cannot give birth to true life. These two small stone race armies that had been cultivated using only one type of energy had an innate flaw, so it was impossible for them to grow to the level of a 9th Order Master, no matter how much energy they absorbed. In order to solve this problem, their energies needed to be converged and condensed in a kind of yin-yang harmony. Only then would there be a slight possibility to go further. After having not come to the chaotic dead territory in so many years, Yang Kai had not only seen hundreds of millions of small stone race members rampaging out of control, but a 9th Order small stone race master also attacked him. Truly, life was unpredictable. Be that as it may, the appearance of this small stone race master in front of him undoubtedly proved that the small stone race could in fact produce existences comparable to 9th Order masters. How did this happen? Yang Kai couldn't help but think of the strange mist he had seen as a vague guess popped up in his mind. Zhang Ruoxi's Heaven's Order bloodline was derived from the core essence of the primordial light, which was the harmonizing factor for the pure Yin and Yang energies of Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan. Yin and Yang were intertwining inside the mist, fulfilling the conditions required for the birth of a 9th Order small stone race. This discovery greatly excited Yang Kai. The small stone race had given birth to something equivalent to a 9th Order Master, which would definitely be of great help to the human race. It was the right choice to make a trip to chaotic dead territory. The mutant small stone race master continued its onslaught against Yang Kai owing to its limited intelligence, while Yang Kai couldn't retaliate against it, putting him in a bit of an awkward situation. Fortunately, that is all it is, Yang Kai softly muttered. Because the small stone race's intelligence was low, it only knew how to punch instinctively. So even though it had strength and speed comparable to a 9th Order Master, its combat capabilities were much inferior. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome to deal with it. Just as this thought flashed through Yang Kai's mind, the small stone race master who had been chasing him all this time suddenly stopped, and did something that greatly stunned him. It raised its two hands and spread its arms, its palms facing each other as if it was holding a giant, invisible ball. The next moment, the color of its eyes suddenly changed, one becoming yellow, the other blue. Their colors weren't constant either, and were instead rapidly changing. At any given moment, the color of its eyes flickered back and forth. Seeing this change, Yang Kai's heart jumped as he instinctively felt something wrong. By the looks of it, this strange small stone race master had another unknown ability. Just as expected, following the actions of this small stone race master, extremely rich Yin and Yang energies emerged in the space between in its palms. The two forces rapidly circled around each other before merging together like a spinning top, rapidly expanding and transforming into the size of a wash basin in the blink of an eye. As the two energies rotated, the yellow and blue colors also began to blend and change. Not far away, Yang Kai stopped and observed, sensing the fluctuations from the ball of energy formed by the fusion of Yin and Yang, quickly deducing the power of this move. This kind of attack was definitely not inferior to a full power strike from a 9th Order Master. From the moment the small stone race master halted and began using this mysterious technique, less than a breath of time had passed. Once the Yin-Yang ball was fully formed, the small stone race master hurled it straight towards Yang Kai. The recoil from this move even pushed the small stone race master a few steps back. Yang Kai raised his brow. This power was even greater than he had expected. Nonetheless, the way it used this secret technique was far too crude. Although this attack was exceptionally strong, it couldn't hit him. Yang Kai simply sidestepped and easily dodged the incoming projectile. Be that as it may, the small stone race master clearly didn't intend to stop. After stabilizing its footing, it repeated its actions. As such, the small stone race master fired several Yin-Yang balls one after another while Yang Kai continued dodging them casually. Is that the only attack it knows? Yang Kai muttered in his heart. After waiting for a while, and confirming that the small stone race master had no new tricks, he decided to end this. He didn't want to kill this small stone race master. No matter how it was born, it should be closely related to Zhang Ruoxi, Big Brother Huang, and Big Sister Lan. Furthermore, this small stone race master would be of great help to the human race. It would be a pity to kill a helper as strong as a ninth order master. Yang Kai wanted to subdue it. In order to command a race with such low sentience like the small stone race, the fastest and most convenient way was to activate the great sun and moon marks. Immediately, Yang Kai stretched his hands towards it, directing the power of the great sun and moon marks towards the small stone race master. Unfortunately, the infallible control method actually had no effect this time. The small stone race master who was attacking Yang Kai with Yin-Yang balls was dazed for a moment, but then resumed attacking immediately after. Yang Kai couldn't help frowning. The great sun and moon marks had always been a foolproof way to command the small stone race. In front of these two marks, even the 8th order small stone race members had always been extremely obedient. This method seemed to have lost all effectiveness with this 9th order small stone race master. This was the first time such a thing had happened. But after giving it a thought, Yang Kai vaguely understood what was going on. The former small stone race soldiers had all been cultivated by either Big Brother Huang or Big Sister Lan, so their marks naturally had a suppressive effect. However, this 9th order one not only had Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan's energies, but also Zhang Ruoxi's ability to harmonize them. It had already become a brand new kind of power. So the great sun and moon marks effects were almost negligible. Although he had come to such a conclusion, Yang Kai was not willing to just give up and tried to activate the power of his marks several more times, but to no avail. Ultimately, he had no choice but to abandon this plan. Damn it! It wasn't easy for a 9th order small stone race master to appear, yet it refused to listen to his orders. Yang Kai wanted to bring it to the battlefield to use as a surprise trump card against the Black Ink clan. Apart from anything else, if such a small stone race master didn't care about its life or death, it wouldn't be a problem for it to battle a royal lord for a short time. Of course, because its attacks were simple and its intelligence was low, it wouldn't end well for it if it were to fight for too long. While many thoughts were flashing across Yang Kai's mind, the small stone race powerhouse seemed to have used up too much of its energy as the yellow and blue color in its eyes gradually became dimmer after sending out so many Yin-Yang balls. Immediately, it turned around and flew towards the direction it had come from. This situation was very much like going back to find food after a fight, not caring if Yang Kai would do anything to it. Yang Kai couldn't help but worry about the intelligence of this being. Although it had extreme strength, if it was let loose on the battlefield without any method to control it, it would likely cause just as much disturbance to the human side as the Black Ink clans. Oh well. Yang Kai relaxed. There was only one such small stone race master, so even if he couldn't subdue it, he wasn't too distressed either. But this joy only lasted for 3 breaths before Yang Kai looked in the direction of the returning small stone race powerhouse, as 2 more identical small stone race masters emerged from the mist. Martial Peak. Chapter 5886 Stand Aside. In the void, half a day later, Yang Kai was using Thunder Shadow's innate divine ability to conceal his aura and figure, staring at the egg-shaped mist from afar with a frustrated look on his face. Originally, he did not regret the fact that he could not subdue the 9th order small stone race master, believing that there was just one such anomaly. He could do nothing about it, but since there was only one, he had no choice but to accept it. However, Yang Kai later discovered that there was more than one of them. After half a day of probing and dragging things out, Yang Kai was certain that there were no less than 5 such masters. As for how many of them there were exactly, he couldn't say for sure, because every time these 9th order small stone race masters emerged from the mist and attacked him, they would return to the mist once they had exhausted themselves too much. And after returning, they would completely disappear like water merging into the sea. This was also the reason why Yang Kai hadn't seen the others before, as their existence was too difficult to detect. At the very least, there were 5 of them, perhaps even more. Yang Kai stared at the mist with naked greed and frustration, so much so that both drool and tears almost trickled down his face. If he could successfully subdue this force, it would be of enormous help to the human race in conquering the no-return pass. But right now, all he could do was stare from afar. He basically didn't have the strength or means to subdue these masters. The great sun and moon marks were unable to control these ninth-order small stone race masters. Left with no alternative, Yang Kai tried to force one of them into his small universe to suppress it. Unfortunately, it was impossible to communicate with them as their level of intelligence was too low. Even when Yang Kai managed to take one in and suppress it, it kept resisting, draining Yang Kai's energy and strength. If he brought them to the battlefield in their current state, it might even cause some damage to the human race. Helpless, Yang Kai could only release the one he suppressed. Even when he was unable to subdue these creatures though, Yang Kai was unwilling to just leave like this, feeling extremely depressed. According to his estimations, since they were created because Zhang Ruoxi had harmonized both yin and yang energies, only Zhang Ruoxi could command them. Furthermore, judging by their behavior, they seemed to be protecting Zhang Ruoxi, because as long as Yang Kai didn't approach the mist, he was completely safe. However, once he got too close, they would immediately attack. This made it obvious they were guarding this place. Yang Kai didn't know what Zhang Ruoxi, Big Brother Huang, and Big Sister Lan had done over the past 1,000 years, but by the looks of it, they seemed to be in the middle of something incredible. The birth of these ninth-order small stone race masters was simply unimaginable before. After quietly observing for a long time, Yang Kai had no choice but to quash his greed. Some things in this world couldn't be forced. What was certain now was that Zhang Ruoxi herself was safe, and she was using her Heaven's Order bloodline to harmonize with Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan's yin and yang energies. Although he didn't know how long this process would last, once she succeeded, she might be able to step into the Ninth Order Open Heaven realm. At that time, the power she would control would definitely surpass all Ninth Order masters. What was that energy turmoil though? Yang Kai couldn't help but recall the scene he had witnessed some time ago. The yang and yin energies seemed to have gone out of control and exploded out into the chaotic dead territory, causing a large amount of yin and yang manifestations to appear, which were then subsequently devoured by the small stone race. Judging by the large population and the body sizes of the small stone race in the chaotic dead territory, this was not the first time this loss of control had occurred. It must have happened many times before. At the same time, because Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan were in a state where their energies were still harmonizing, the small stone race soldiers in the chaotic dead territory no longer had any restrictions and had reverted back to their original nature, instinctually devouring resources, breeding new clansmen, then fighting to the death. This was the reason why Yang Kai saw so many small stone race members fighting in the chaotic dead territory. If the yin and yang energies exploded with such frequency, perhaps I should observe it for a while. I don't think it will take too long. Having come to a decision, Yang Kai decided to spend a year observing the situation here in order to obtain more information. Time ticked by bit while Yang Kai remained hidden all this while, observing the situation around Zhang Ruoxi. Just as he had expected, the frequency at which the energies went out of control was indeed very high. He didn't even need to wait for an entire year. In just 3 months, the originally stable fog suddenly started fluctuating wildly. Right then Zhang Ruoxi, who seemed to be peacefully sleeping in the middle of the fog, unconsciously let out a groan. Judging by her voice, she seemed to be enduring incredible pain. At the same time, the yin and yang energies that were constantly flowing and fusing in the mist also became unstable. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling light began to spread outward with the fog egg as the center. A moment later, just like what Yang Kai had seen 3 months ago, the entire chaotic dead territory was filled with the manifestations of yin and yang energy, causing countless small stone race members to flock towards them. After personally witnessing this scene, Yang Kai finally understood the cause behind it. The yin and yang energies had rampaged out of control simply because Zhang Ruoxi was too weak. Of course, her current cultivation in the 8th order could in no way be considered weak in general terms, but compared to Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan, she was still a slightly bigger ant at best. Even though she possessed the Heavens Order bloodline, it was still difficult for her to fully control the power of beings that were born at the creation of the universe. So when she tried to harmonize the primordial Yin and Yang energies, some situations would occur that were difficult to control. Once such a situation occurred, she would lose control of the Yin and Yang energies, which would then disperse into the surroundings, resulting in the massive increase of the small stone race in the chaotic dead territory. Fortunately, the Heavens Order bloodline was truly amazing, especially when it came to harmonizing Yang and Yin. Every time the energies went out of control, they would be stabilized once more in short order. After observing the loss of control of the energies from a close distance, Yang Kai was finally able to determine the exact number of 9th Order Small Stone Race Masters. When the energies went out of control, the 9th Order Small Stone Race Masters who were hidden in the fog also became visible, at which point Yang Kai counted 8 of them. How many 9th Order Masters did the human race have attacking the No-Return Pass? Including Shi Dezhuang and Tang Tao who had recently broken through in the last 20 years, there were only 10 of them in total, but there were actually 8 9th Order Small Stone Race Masters. If Yang Kai could somehow drag these 8 Small Stone Race Masters to the battlefield, who knows how many lives they could save? Wiping the corner of his mouth, Yang Kai ruthlessly squashed his greedy thoughts again before turning around and flying towards the depths of the void. He had come here intending to bring Zhang Ruoxi out so that she could play some role on the battlefield, but by the looks of it, this plan would not work. At the very least, it would be impossible for her to emerge until she had successfully harmonized the Yang and Yin energies. Until then, Yang Kai could not take these 9th Order Small Stone Race Masters to the battlefield either, he could only look at them from afar. Since that was the case, Yang Kai decided to take some regular Small Stone Race soldiers, especially the 8th Order ones. This was the main reason he had come here. His speed was extremely fast and in the blink of an eye after activating his space principles, Yang Kai arrived at a nearby battlefield. At this moment, as the Yin and Yang energies had erupted not too long ago and a group of small stone race soldiers happened to have surrounded a manifestation of Yang energy and were constantly devouring it, Yang Kai teleported over, opened his small universe, and activated the great sun and moon marks, shouting, "Stand aside." He didn't care if the small stone race understood or not, he just wanted to vent his frustrations. The great sun and moon marks might have no effect on the 9th Order ones, but it was always successful in commanding these ordinary small stone race soldiers. With a single command, the small stone race members stepped aside, revealing the Yang energy manifestation they had surrounded. The manifestation originally bore a resemblance with Big Brother Huang's true form, albeit much smaller in size, but after being eaten by the small stone race members, it now looked like a Phoenix clan member with broken wings. Yang Kai didn't mind and directly took it into his small universe and suppressed it. Immediately after, he rushed to the next location. After so many years of constant war, the human race's demand for yellow and blue crystals had become extremely high. Yang Kai had originally wanted to ask Big Brother Huang and Big Sister Lan for more yellow and blue crystals, but now that he couldn't, he could only use this method to collect some. As such, he had to act quickly, otherwise the omnipresent small stone race would soon devour all of the dissipated Yin and Yang energies. For a time, Yang Kai's figure shuttled back and forth through the void, borrowing the power of the great sun and moon marks to force all of the small stone race to retreat and obediently hand over their food to him. Even if Yang Kai was fast though, he had no choice but to stop after an incense stick worth of time, because apart from the Yin and Yang energies he had taken into his small universe, the rest of the dispersed energies had been devoured clean by the small stone race. Many small stone race members had become stronger, even breaking through their own limits. Standing still, Yang Kai examined his harvest. Inside his small universe, the Yang and Yin energies suppressed by him had already transformed into pieces of yellow and blue crystals. Some were as small as a fist while others were as large as a house. His harvest was not small, but it was definitely not much. The main reason was that Yang Kai was a bit slow as he had to carefully observe Zhang Ruoxi's situation first, which gave the small stone race ample time to devour most of the dispersed yin and yang energies. Yang Kai naturally would not be satisfied with such a small harvest, so he immediately began traversing through the void. At the same time, he opened a portal to his small universe and kept it open all the while. In any case, Yang Kai wasn't worried about his own strength leaking with the World Tree clone protecting his small universe. This would have been quite a risky move for any other open heaven realm master, as every bit of energy leaking out of the portal was a result of arduous and time-consuming cultivation. The loss of every bit of energy would make one a bit weaker. Yang Kai also left the great sun and moon marks on the backs of his hands constantly active. Everywhere he went, he would collect all the suitable small stone race soldiers he could find into his small universe, just like how the autumn wind would sweep away the fallen leaves. The selection criteria was simple. All those comparable to human race third-order open heaven realm masters were taken. All the small stone race members who didn't even have such strength would be useless, even if Yang Kai collected them. If he were to let them out on the battlefield, he would just be sending them to their deaths, so he might as well let them continue to grow stronger here instead. Martial Peak. Chapter 5887, Popping His Head Out. In just a short month, Yang Kai had taken in more than a couple 100 million small stone race soldiers into his small universe. Such a terrifying number put even Yang Kai's small universe under a great deal of pressure. Although he could still take in more after carefully weighing the pros and cons, he decided to temporarily put aside this unrestrained method of collecting small stone race soldiers, and instead focus on taking in the elites. As such, he continued to wander through the chaotic dead territory's various battlefields for the next 2 months, specifically looking for the 8th Order ones. He might not be able to subdue Zhang Ruoxi's 9th Order small stone race masters, but with the help of the great sun and moon marks, it wasn't a problem to subdue some 8th Order ones. Right now, the 8th Order ones in the chaotic dead territory were in quite a large number, and with the constant dispersion of the yang and yin energy, this number would only continue to increase. As such, Yang Kai's actions didn't have much of an impact on the population of the small stone race. All he needed to do was grasp the balance between the two sides. While he was subduing a certain number of Great Sun small stone race, he also needed to subdue an equal number of Great Moon small stone race members. This way, he wouldn't break the balance in the chaotic dead territory, which would naturally prevent a situation where one side completely suppressed the other, and would eventually wipe it out. 3 months after the last energy burst, a dazzling light once again appeared in Zhang Ruoxi's direction, followed by the dispersal of yin and yang energies in all directions, filling the chaotic dead territory. Yang Kai was well prepared this time. He immediately began competing with the small stone race armies for the manifestations of yang and yin energies. As such, his harvest was much greater than last time. When the energy went out of control, he would collect the manifestations, and after the energy stabilized, he would search for the 8th Order small stone race members. Only after more than a year did Yang Kai finally leave the chaotic dead territory. The small stone race members he had subdued were enough, and he had also collected a large amount of yellow and blue crystals, enough to sustain the human race for 1,000 years. Although there was still some time left, Yang Kai didn't dare to stay any longer. According to his and Mi Jingluan's plan, after the human race's first attack on the No Return Pass, they would launch their second attack 2 years later regardless of the previous results. However, sometimes plans couldn't keep up with sudden changes in the status quo and accidents might occur, causing the second battle to be brought forward ahead of schedule. As such, he had to return to the barren territory as soon as possible. The return trip was uneventful, and Yang Kai returned to the barren territory after 3 months. Yang Kai had taken 3 months to reach the chaotic dead territory as well, because he wasn't in a hurry, and he was injured as well. He was using the journey to slowly recover from his wounds, so he hadn't used his full strength. Yang Kai didn't stop for even a moment on his way back, but the reason why he had spent the same amount of time was because his top speed had fallen. He had taken in too many small stone race into his small universe, which made it difficult for him to circulate his strength. To put it simply, the small universe's burden had affected his strength, lowering his speed. The moment Yang Kai returned to the barren territory, he immediately looked in the direction of the territory gate. He could vaguely see the magnificent no-return pass, but there seemed to be no sign of a battle. Yang Kai immediately breathed a sigh of relief after confirming this. However, just to be safe, he still entered the territory gate and poked his head out to take a closer look at the no-return pass. As far as the eye could see, the entire no-return pass was in an extremely tense state, with soldiers flinching up at the slightest sound. The dense black ink strength was like a thick layer of dark clouds that covered the sky. Compared to the last battle, the current no-return pass had obviously undergone some changes in its defensive arrangements. With the help of the damaged Great Passes, the Black Ink clan's perimeter had shrunk, and a large number of artifacts had been placed on these damaged Great Passes. The entire no-return pass was filled with a sense of danger. By the looks of it, the last battle had clearly made the Black Ink clan aware of their own disadvantages. Although occupying the no-return pass gave them the defenders' advantage, correspondingly, it made them a fixed target. The human race's strategy of using universe worlds to attack them was a perfect example of how their fixed position could be taken advantage of. As such, even though the Black Ink clan's forces were still strong, they had still shrunk their defensive perimeter, greatly increasing their defensive strength. Under normal circumstances, it would be impossible for the human race to obtain similar results after the Black Ink clan had made such changes. In the last battle, the Black Ink clan was caught off guard when the universe worlds came flying at them. Hundreds of universe worlds had various spirit arrays arranged on them, so the damage from this assault was immense. Once the Black Ink clan's defensive line was broken, the human race army wrought havoc by flooding in through these breaches. With the current deployment of the Black Ink clan, even if the human race used their previous tactics of launching universe worlds, they wouldn't be able to easily breach the defensive line. Yang Kai couldn't help but click his tongue. Although he knew that taking back the no-return pass would not be an easy task, he found that it was even more difficult to deal with than he had expected after seeing that the Black Ink clan had gathered all of their forces. Just as he was thinking of continuing to observe, more than a dozen fearsome auras suddenly appeared in his vicinity as numerous secret techniques came flying towards him from all directions. Yang Kai hastily withdrew his head. The commotion here quickly attracted Mo Naye's attention, and he instantly rushed out. Arriving near the territory gate, he took a glance around before coldly asking, "What is it?" One of the pseudo-royal lords who was stationed here for a long time replied. Yang Kai's head just popped out. Yang Kai was currently in the barren territory with the two giant spirit gods, so how could Mo Naye not be on guard against him? Therefore, he had arranged more than a dozen pseudo-royal lords to monitor the territory gate after the last great battle, in case Yang Kai suddenly attacked. According to his understanding of Yang Kai, he knew that this bastard wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. When Yang Kai had not recently appeared, much to his surprise, Mo Naye guessed that Yang Kai was probably healing himself. His head popped out. Hearing the pseudo-royal lord's explanation, Mo Naye furrowed his brow. "It's like this," the pseudo-royal lord explained as he made a gesture like a turtle stretching its head. Mo Naye's face twitched as he watched the pseudo-royal lord imitate Yang Kai. Well, this could certainly be described as his head popping out. The pseudo-royal lord continued, "I guess he wanted to investigate the situation here, and had no intention of actually coming over. I also don't think he would dare to." Mo Naye coldly snorted before exhorting, "Be careful, if Yang Kai dares to pop out his head again, knock him back." Mo Naye didn't say anything about killing Yang Kai, because that was impossible. Last time, Yang Kai had still managed to escape in that kind of situation. So how could this menace give the Black Ink clan another chance to kill him? Yes. The pseudo-royal lords nodded. Mo Naye clenched his fists and lightly coughed before turning around and returning to his Black Ink nest. He had also suffered some minor injuries in the last battle. His wounds weren't serious, at least not to the point where he needed to enter a Black Ink nest to recover. But he knew in his heart that as long as the battle continued, his injuries would continue to accumulate. Sooner or later, they would develop to the point where he needed to enter a deep slumber to heal. And once that happened, the Black Ink clan would not be far from defeat. The fact that the Black Ink clan needed to enter Black Ink nests to recover from serious injuries had always been the greatest flaw of their entire race. The human race, who long ago figured this out, never let such opportunities slip by. After so many years of war, the human race had used this flaw to stir up trouble more than once. When the Black Ink clan invaded the 3,000 worlds, they had a clear and absolute advantage on the 12 frontline battlefields, but they had never been able to defeat the human race army. The main reason was because the humans fought back doggedly, putting their lives on the line to trade injuries with the enemy, forcing many Black Ink clan masters back to their Black Ink nests to slumber. When the humans were injured, they could quickly recover with the help of secret techniques or pills. But what about the Black Ink clan? Once their injuries accumulated to a certain degree, they would either be killed or forced to return to the no-return pass to recuperate. As such, their advantage in numbers was greatly diminished. Hundreds of years ago, even though the Eighth Order masters knew that they were no match for the pseudo-royal lords, they would still go all out to injure their opponents even at the risk of death. Thanks to the sacrifice of many Eighth Order masters, at least a quarter of all pseudo-royal lords were constantly stuck in the no-return pass recuperating. Inside a certain Black Ink nest, a look of sadness appeared on Mo Naye's face. Originally, the Black Ink clan had the upper hand, but now they had fallen to such a state. In the entire Black Ink clan, perhaps no other Black Ink clansman could clearly see the turning point of this battle besides him. Even Mo might have no idea. In fact, back when the Black Ink clan was forced by Yang Kai to withdraw all their claws and fangs and retreat to the no-return pass, Mo Naye had already anticipated this day. Prior to this, the Black Ink clan held the initiative in terms of overall strength, so all of Mo Naye's plans and arrangements were extremely reliable. It could be said that as long as there were no unexpected accidents, the Black Ink clan had a 70% chance of winning the war. Unfortunately for the Black Ink clan, after the appearance of the universe furnace, Yang Kai, who had disappeared for some 600 years, suddenly returned and disrupted everything. Under his domineering intimidation, Mo Naye had no choice but to recall all of the pseudo-royal lords and territory lords who had been fighting on the front lines. The abandoned Black Ink clan armies were naturally wiped out by the humans, causing the Black Ink clan to suffer further heavy losses. Even that was still fine though. But the key was that the Black Ink clan had no place to go other than retreating to the no-return pass and guarding it. As such, the human race was able to gather all of its forces, and no longer need to split up like before. All they needed to do was focus their attacks on the no-return pass, while not having to worry about any other fronts. The true turning point of the war between the human race and Black Ink clan was when Yang Kai, who had disappeared for hundreds of years, suddenly reappeared. After his appearance, the human race and Black Ink clan's defensive and offensive positions had switched. Without Yang Kai's coercion, the Black Ink clan wouldn't have been reduced to such a miserable situation. If there was no Yang Kai, the Black Ink clan would have dozens more pseudo-royal lords today. If there was no Yang Kai, the innate territory lords who had snuck out of the primordial heavens source grand restriction would have all been able to safely arrive at the no-return pass. At that time, the Black Ink clan's strength would have definitely soared, and the human race would not have been their opponent. Unfortunately, all that was only if Yang Kai didn't exist. Over the years, Yang Kai had slowly shaved pieces of flesh bit by bit from the body of a fat cow that was the Black Ink clan like a skilled butcher. Even now the Black Ink clan still looked powerful, but in reality, they were not far from their doom. Marshall Peak. Chapter 5888, New Cultivation Method. As shrewd and intelligent as Mo Naye was, how could he not see that it was impossible for the Black Ink clan to win this battle? Sooner or later, the human race would overwhelm the Black Ink clan army and capture the no-return pass. The only fate awaiting the Black Ink clansmen in the no-return pass was to be completely wiped out. Even if he knew this though, what was he supposed to do? It was impossible for him to escape. Furthermore, the human race would have to pay a big price to capture the no-return pass. The humans still had a bigger target after taking down the no-return pass. If he could cripple the human race army, using the power of the Black Ink clansmen in the no-return pass, even if the humans won this battle, they would still lose the war. As long as the Black Ink clan could unify all under the heavens and allow Mo to rule supreme, it did not matter if all the Black Ink clansmen in the no-return pass were sacrificed. The human race had already revealed all of their cards, but the strength the Black Ink clan had shown until now was still just the tip of the iceberg. This war that concerned the survival of the two races would ultimately end in the defeat of the human race. Mo Nai firmly believed this. At the same time, the space-time river stretched across the void in the barren territory. Wind and clouds were surging on the surface of the river as Dao strengths undulated. Inside the long river, Yang Kai was pushing the time Dao strength to its utmost limit, deriving its endless mysteries. He had borrowed the strength of the star boundary and the myriad monsters world for the last 20 years to cultivate, which allowed his strength to soar, but he still had room for improvement. According to his own classification of the Ninth Order Open Heaven realm, he was currently only in the mid-stage. Now there was no longer a suitable universe world to rely on to cultivate. If he wanted to simply rely on the accumulation of time to increase his strength, even with Yang Kai's cultivation speed and his small universe's innate advantages, 2,000 years would likely be the minimum he needed to reach the peak of the Ninth Order Open Heaven realm. If he could reach the peak, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone even if he was up against a Black Ink giant spirit god. But under the current circumstances, what he lacked the most was time. According to the Supreme Headquarters plan, they needed to conquer the no-return pass within 20 years before they continued their crusade to the primordial heaven's source grand restriction, quelling the Black Ink clan disaster once and for all. With Yang Kai's current foundation, even if he cultivated this entire time, he probably wouldn't make any noticeable progress. Fortunately, time wasn't something immutable, especially in front of someone like Yang Kai who was proficient in the grand Daos of time and space. The time flow of his small universe was 10 times faster than the outside world. So a year in the outside world was 10 years in his small universe. Long ago, Yang Kai chanced upon several temporal rivers inside the Great Sea celestial phenomenon, which allowed him to cultivate for the equivalent of 4,000 years in just a few hundred years in the outside world, breaking through to the Eighth Order in one fell swoop. His attainments in many of his grand Daos had also improved during that time. With all these kinds of personal experiences, it naturally gave birth to some ideas in Yang Kai's head. But of course, just having ideas was useless. He needed to have the ability to turn them into reality to receive any benefits. Fortunately, with Yang Kai's attainments in the Tao of Time, he was already equipped with this ability. He had once built 3 sealed worlds in High Heaven Palace that were related to the 3 primary grand Daos he cultivated, respectively space, time, and spear Dao sealed worlds. Not to mention, the space and spear Dao sealed worlds, the time Dao sealed world had a similar effect to his small universe. Cultivators who entered it to gain experience would experience a faster flow of time compared to the outside world, but the ratio wasn't as exaggerated. It was only about 1 to 4. Even so, the soldiers still flocked to this place, as only 1 year passed on the outside while one cultivated for 4 years in the time Dao sealed world. It was equivalent to increasing the efficiency of their cultivation by 4 times. Therefore, among these 3 sealed worlds, the time Dao sealed world was the most popular because even if one wasn't proficient in the Dao of Time, they could still use this sealed world to cultivate, while a few who were proficient in the Dao of Time could comprehend the mysteries of the Dao of Time and improve the mastery of their own grand Dao. Originally, the 3 sealed worlds Yang Kai had left behind were for the disciples of the Void Dao Temple to cultivate their grand Daos. But there were no restrictions on entry. Once too many soldiers wanted to enter the time Dao sealed world though, which severely affected the disciples who had truly cultivated the Dao of Time. Some rules were put in place. Head manager Hua had no choice but to report this matter to the Supreme Headquarters. After which, the Supreme Headquarters issued an order that one needed a certain amount of military merits to enter the time Dao sealed world. Even so, that did little to dampen the enthusiasm of the soldiers. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Kai was always on the move, and it was hard to get a hold on him. Mi Jingluan would have asked him to build more time Dao sealed worlds. It could be said that Yang Kai had been able to create a sealed world inside of which the flow of time different from the outside world a long time ago. And now that he had reached the 9th order, with his mastery over the Tao of time had reached an even higher level, he was naturally more proficient in such matters. In fact, when Yang Kai had escaped from the universe furnace, and was on his way back from the edge of the universe, he had already started working on this. Yang Kai had not just been hurrying along during his 600-year journey, he had also realized that time was not on his side. No matter how quickly his strength increased, it was unable to keep up with the progress of the war. If he wanted to completely solve this problem, he had to find a way to gain more time. After 600 years of painstaking research and many improvements, he had developed a certain method to do exactly that. At this moment, the Tao strengths in the space-time river stretched across the void were astir under Yang Kai's control. Soon, Yang Kai had stripped away thousands of Tao strengths, leaving behind only the last Tao strength of time. This was not difficult for the current Yang Kai. Although his mastery of the Tao of time had yet to break through to the highest 9th level, he had reached the very peak of the 8th level. With this, the space-time river transformed into a temporal river. It was exactly the same as the temporal rivers he had seen in the Great Sea celestial phenomenon all those years ago, but its effects were even more amazing. Using his full strength, Yang Kai was able to create a flow of time that was 30 times faster than that of the outside world. In other words, while 1 year passed in the outside world, 30 would go by inside the temporal river. Back when he was cultivating in the Great Sea celestial phenomenon, Yang Kai would have to search for new temporal rivers after exhausting the time Tao essence in his previous temporal river. But now that the temporal river was created using his own Tao strength, it would be much more convenient and faster than before. As long as Yang Kai was willing, he could use this temporal river and enter a state of cultivation at any moment. Of course, cultivating like this and continuously using his time Tao strength was quite taxing on him, but compared to his gains, this was a minor concern. With the problem of time resolved, Yang Kai now had another problem, which was resources. This kind of cultivation required an enormous amount of resources, and Yang Kai didn't have many on hand. He had plenty of yellow and blue crystals, but he lacked 5 elements materials. As such, compared to his previous worry about the human race declaring war early, Yang Kai was now more than happy to see the human race go to war sooner. While he was cultivating in the temporal river, Ada and Air were eating a dead universe world. This universe world had been given to them by Yang Kai after he returned from myriad monsters' territory. Giant spirit gods fell asleep after they were full, so Yang Kai did not dare to feed them too much at once. As such, although Yang Kai still had a lot of world beads on hand, he didn't plan on taking them all out at once. In the long temporal river, a large number of materials were refined by Yang Kai as time passed by, building up the foundation of his small universe, and allowing him to slowly expand his heritage. After an unknown period, Yang Kai suddenly felt a shockwave and immediately ended his cultivation, exiting the temporal river. The shockwave was an agreement between him and the 2 giant spirit gods. He had asked them to inform him right away if something happened at the no-return pass. After all, he was deep in meditative cultivation inside a distorted spacetime, so his ability to sense outside movements was quite restricted. At this moment, he jumped out of the river and shot a glance towards the no-return pass. As expected, he noticed that the situation there wasn't quite right. A large number of Black Ink clansmen had been mobilized to form a defensive line, as if they were preparing for a war. The war has finally resumed. Yang Kai let out a sigh of relief. The supplies he had on hand had almost been exhausted, and if the human race did not start fighting soon, he would ultimately have to end his cultivation anyway. At this moment, seeing the no-return past Black Ink clan's response, Yang Kai knew that the human race army was on the move. However, because they were separated by a territory gate, he couldn't clearly see the exact situation of the no-return pass, let alone what was happening further away with the human army. However, he was both bold and talented. In a flash, Yang Kai arrived at the territory gate using instantaneous movement, and just like last time, popped his head out and looked into the distance. Although he was knocked back by the pseudo-royal lords who were standing guard nearby the next moment, he was still able to catch a glimpse of the human race army approaching from the distant void. Yang Kai immediately rubbed his palms together. In the battle 2 years ago, the human race had gained the upper hand and killed countless enemies. After 2 years, the human race would be able to obtain a significant advantage in the second attack as well. Of course, the most important thing was that he was no longer the same person he was 2 years ago. He had only cultivated for a short time and his strength had not changed much, but he was no longer fighting alone. He now had many helpers. This battle will definitely shock the Black Ink clan. Contrary to Yang Kai's itch for action, Mo Na Yi had an extremely solemn look on his face. The human race army was approaching, and there was also Yang Kai and the 2 giant spirit gods eyeing them from the barren territory. The 2 giant spirit gods could basically be ignored for the moment, as neither side would easily deploy their strongest forces before the final confrontation began. Both sides had a tacit understanding about this. However, Yang Kai was different. Mo Na Yi was certain that this bastard wouldn't be willing to sit still, and would definitely kill his way out of the barren territory and stir up trouble. How annoying! We need to restrain him. Once this guy steps onto the battlefield, all of the pseudo-royal lords of the Black Ink clan would be in danger. Thinking so, Mo Na Yi called out, "Dia Luo." Standing beside him, the new royal lord shot a glance at him. "What instructions does Sir Mo Na Yi have?" "I need you to block Yang Kai. Don't let him come to the no-return pass," Mo Na Yi concisely stated. Dia Luo's expression slightly changed as he hesitated. "If it was just me, I'm afraid. The pseudo-royal lords guarding the territory gate will cooperate with you." Mo Na Yi interrupted. "Are you confident?" Dia Luo was silent for a moment before quickly replying, "I will do my best." That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.